Chapter 1283. Chinmo's lips brushed past Bojio's ears. Even though he didn't kiss her, it was more intimate. He looked into her eyes, chuckling lightly, his voice mesmerizing and deep. Just a single sentence from him was enough to make one's body heat up. Fortunately, they knew how to restrain themselves. Bojio pushed him away, reaching for her phone. She could hear the stewardess's high heels. The next second, the curtains were pulled open. Distinguished guests, our plane has landed safely. Please take your belongings with you when you get off the plane. Have a pleasant journey next time. This was probably the benefit of spending a lot of money. Even on the plane, there was a private space. Bojio caressed her neck, smiling suavely. Thank you. The stewardess was dazzled by her smile, nodding. Bojio placed the phone by her ear, lowering her voice as she said, "Hello." She and the Almighty didn't have any luggage. Bojio took a step before realizing that the Almighty wasn't following her. She turned back and saw Chinmo's gaze sweeping towards the stewardess. His lips moved slightly, but she didn't know what he was saying. The stewardess's pupils constricted. She seemed to have been hypnotized, her body arching. Bojio couldn't see this because of her position. The stewardess was standing with her back facing her. But even so, the Almighty's smile made her hand pause for a moment. She wasn't a naive girl. She knew what that smile meant. But what should she do? That was her Chinmo regardless of what he turned into. He would always be her little princess. Bojio reached out, tugging his wrist over. She tilted her body slightly, blocking his gaze towards the stewardess. She smiled faintly. Brother Mo, I'll get jealous if you flirt with someone like that. Chinmo hadn't expected her to turn back so suddenly. After his wrist was touched, he couldn't be bothered with the hypnosis he had completed. After all, he couldn't let his prey notice anything wrong with him. He shifted his gaze away casually and said faintly, I get jealous when you smile at someone like that. Bojio stilled as she was being countered. That was the time difference. The air stewardess seemed to have woken up. She saw the young man holding the man's wrist. At such a close distance, it looked intimate. Bojio coughed lightly, dragging the Almighty away since the stewardess was still in shock. However, it was just a guess. She also vaguely understood one thing. It would be difficult for the Almighty to stand in the esports arena again. Previously, she had been thinking of bringing the Almighty back as soon as possible. However, he had neglected one point. Right now, would he still coordinate with everyone in the team and fight a match? All of this was unknown. It was better to think of a way to stop him from thinking of manipulating others. Handsome, harmless, and able to lead people's thoughts unknowingly. Such a dangerous Almighty. He had to keep it by his side. Bojio glanced over. Brother Mo, it seems like I have to watch you 24/7. Just like you used to look at me looking at you. At that time, she had always thought that he did not believe her. When the two of them exchanged places, Bojio finally understood. He looked at her as if he didn't want anything bad to happen to her. Right now, she was feeling the same way. She was afraid that one day, he would regain his memory and regret what he had done. Chapter 1284. Watch me 24 hours a day. Are you sure? Chinmo didn't understand Bojio's thoughts, but he chuckled. It was light, but his gaze was as deep as the stars. I will torment you at night, but that's good too. You can put some of the things you learned into practice. When he said this, his breath was right behind her ear. It was slightly hot and slow, as though it was intentional. Bojio's uneasiness dissipated. She held onto his hand and continued walking. No matter what, it was good that he was here. Moreover, he allowed her to hold onto his hand so obediently. From a certain perspective, she felt that she was taking advantage of him. After all, he had allowed her to hold onto his hand when they were young. In the past, he would only tilt his head and glance at her. Now it was good. She held onto his hand and he would follow her. Regardless of the reason, the blissful feeling was still the same. Indeed, Chinmo wouldn't struggle free. He probably found it strange too. Or perhaps he was indulging his beloved prey. Hence, he allowed himself to temporarily become an obedient pet boy. After all, he claimed to be a sugar daddy. A hint of playfulness flashed past Chinmo's eyes. He had never seen such a pure sugar daddy. It tasted sweet in his mouth. He was indeed interested in those books. Today he could study them properly. Bojo didn't know what he was thinking, but she knew that even if he changed his appearance, the Almighty's aura wouldn't change. She took out 2 black masks. After walking out of the tunnel, she gestured for him to lower his head. Qin Mo glanced at the things in her hands. He arched a brow. It seems like I can't be seen in Jiang City. It's not that you can't be seen. You are too popular and have too many fans. Bojo seemed to understand the Almighty's temper. She added, I don't want others to see you since you are mine. It was obvious that this sentence had an effect. She could see the faint smile on his lips under the bright light. Qin Mo didn't move. Instead, he lowered his body. His intention was clear. Bojo didn't need to lift her feet. She just needed to move her fingers, grazing his ear. The black mask unfurled, covering his handsome mixed-race face. How is it? Qin Mo asked casually. Bojo wore her mask as well. Through the black cloth she smiled. Very handsome. She was even more arrogant than before. He had to be praised. So what if such a great god was dangerous? In fact, to a certain extent. In this way, he had just released everything, including some of his childhood habits. Bojo knew how dangerous the Almighty was when he wasn't even able to suppress his malevolence. He wouldn't be a rat like Fanjia who only knew how to play tricks in the corner, nor would he be a criminal who created grievances like Kuang. He would do whatever he wanted, unrestrained by worldly rules. If he wanted to make a move, he would make a move just like on the plane. He was more cunning than any psychopath. Like a demon, he could kill gracefully. This was the reason why people were afraid that his personality would change drastically after being hypnotized. Bojo understood everything. That was why she had to hold on to him and not let go. Not for the sake of protecting anyone. She was clear that she was the only one by his side. It was probably because this person was too strong. He was so strong that the first thing everyone thought about after he lost his memory was how dangerous he was. But no one had thought about his uneasiness and guesses. Who was he? Why did he appear in this place? Who should he trust? What was he thinking when he was facing so many speedboats and guns? The moment she thought about it, her heart softened. When she turned back, she saw his arrogant and aloof expression. It was clear that he was a little childish. How could he be so adorable? I want to make you small again. Qin Mo thought he had heard wrongly, but after leaning forward, he confirmed that she had indeed made a sound, even though it was soft. Bojo continued. Then I can hug you in my arms and not let anyone bully you. Bully him? Qin Mo arched a brow. The youngster's stern and serious expression entered his eyes. It was that gaze that stopped him from executing his plan. In this world, who could bully him? He was really an idiot. But why didn't he want to leave? The only explanation Qin Mo could find was that his interest in her hadn't diminished. That was all. The two of them walked out of the terminal. They didn't have to wait for any luggage, so they were faster than the others. But the way they held hands without any taboo caused many people to turn back. The two of them were good-looking to begin with. Wearing masks to share the burden did not detract from this aspect. Instead, it added a sense of fashion. A girl exclaimed, "This is the most compatible couple I've ever seen. The airport is indeed the airport. I can see two handsome guys at once and they are a couple." Qin Mo lifted the corner of his lips as he listened to the conversation. A couple? It sounded familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had heard it before. Of course, he wouldn't waste his time on such things, because he still had to face the mutual friend that she had mentioned. Outside the airport, a long Rolls-Royce was parked in the middle of a row of cars. It was a low-profile black, but even so, it was enough to make a group of people stop. After all, there weren't many such cars in the country. Which family's young master was back? Everyone was guessing if he was a rich and powerful person in Jiang City. But no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't remember who was driving this car. Moreover, the person standing in front of the car was unfamiliar. He looked to be in his 60s, a Chinese-British old man with a tall and slender figure. There weren't many people who could wear such a classic suit, but this person did it. He held a pocket watch in his hand and glanced at it from time to time. He looked like a noble deacon that only appeared in comics, his entire body exuding wisdom. Was there a big production team filming a movie here? Or was it because Christmas was coming and they were filming a promotional video? After all, it wasn't realistic. But the next second the old man smiled. He looked at the international exit kindly, his gaze landing on one spot. Then he opened the back door in a gentlemanly manner and gestured for them to enter. At this moment, everyone noticed the two people walking out. They were both wearing masks but had an extraordinary aura. They wanted to take a few photos. When Bojo saw this scene, her heart was in turmoil. After all, she hadn't expected Grandfather Butler to drive such a car. It was fine on Fifth Avenue. But this was China, it was too eye-catching. Chapter 1285. In order to avoid being recognized, Bojo held onto Chinmo's wrist and entered the car. After the car door closed, she looked up and smiled faintly. This is Grandfather Butler, a relative who watched me grow up. Chinmo lifted the corner of his eyes and met the gaze from the rearview mirror. That gaze made him smile. Grandfather Butler. How could the old man not hear the nonchalance in his words? This man wasn't born to be obedient. Now that he was so obedient, it made him frown. But looking at the young master's expression, he was happy. The old man retracted his gaze and showed his professionalism as a butler. Young lord called Grandfather Butler. Young Master Chin is a guest, you don't have to be so polite. Chinmo understood the meaning behind his words. He touched his teeth with the tip of his tongue and smiled innocently. Finally, someone knew to be on guard against him. But he was probably the only one who had never thought about being on guard against him. Chinmo's gaze landed on Bojo's face again. If he wanted to take her away, he would have to go through the old man first. Chinmo's intuition was terrifyingly accurate. Grandfather Butler was also a doctor. He knew the effects of hypnosis. But at the same time, he understood that he wouldn't interfere with his young lord's decision. But there was one thing he could try to see if he could recover the man's memory. You haven't eaten yet. There are fresh ingredients at home. Young Master Chin, what would you like to eat? Since the other party was polite, Chinmo wouldn't tear apart his darkness. He continued to smile. Anything is fine. Let's see what my sugar daddy wants to eat. Sugar daddy? Grandfather Butler glanced sideways at his young lord. His head hurt slightly. What kind of title was that? How many times had he told his young lord to be a lady? Bojo smiled beautifully. She was satisfied with the title. Hot pot, it'll be quick. With that, she tilted her head and grabbed Chinmo's hand, placing it in her palm. Brother Emo, you have to remember something. Chinmo raised a brow. Bojo smiled suavely. My favorite game is the keyboard, my favorite food is hot pot, and my favorite person is you. Chinmo stilled, something surging in his eyes before he slowly lowered them. I don't know what I like to play or eat the most, but there's one thing I'm sure of. You're the only person I like the most. Yes, this was the perfect prey. Especially when her eyes only fell on him. They were incomparably beautiful. However, the premise was that she would only be good to him. Chinmo thought about it. He hadn't paid much attention to what she had said before. It was time to give it a try. Since he wanted people to leave willingly, he had to act a little more convincing. Chinmo held her in his hands. His eyes were focused, but at the same time, there was an unsettling darkness. At the very least, when Grandpa Butler saw this scene, his mood was quite complicated. According to his analysis of Chinmo, once his hypnosis was activated, anyone would become dispensable in his eyes. This was related to the environment he grew up in. He had an indifferent personality and in the past, he had a responsibility. Now that there was nothing that could restrain him, he naturally didn't need to be afraid of anything. There were too many criminal psychologists in this world, and under normal circumstances, they all had a motive. Chinmo was scary because he didn't have a motive. Even if he committed a crime one day, it might just be because his hands were itchy and he was unhappy. However, such a person actually followed his young lord back to Jiang City, and clearly expressed his possessiveness. The old butler didn't know if he should be happy for his young lord or worried. If Chinmo wanted to do something now, even he wouldn't be able to stop him. The journey from the airport to her apartment wasn't long. It was a commercial apartment that Bojio had specially chosen. This apartment was the closest to the Qin Group's club. In less than 3 days, it would be more convenient for the team members to gather together for training. There would definitely be people watching over there. Bojio was very familiar with their methods. It was safest for Lin Feng and the others to come here. Moreover, with Grandpa Butler around, they could avoid other problems. Since the Almighty loved to play games so much, perhaps he would remember something when he saw his team members. She had communicated with Movie Queenan about this. Movie Queenan felt that this was the most reliable method. She knew most of her son's life. Other than business games, it was his team members. He didn't spend much time at home. Bojio realized that from a certain perspective, the heavens had never been gentle to this man. At least she had Grandpa Butler by her side. When she had been young, she would talk to others when she missed him. According to his personality, no one would tell him when he missed her. Bojio tilted her head and looked at the transparent hand. The poker cards appeared again. She knew it was a precaution against a new place. Her phone rang again. It was Lin Feng. Bojio opened it and put it on speaker. Hello. Hey little spade, you're back, aren't you? Lin Feng's voice was filled with excitement. F***CK, you're back faster than I expected. Where's Captain? Bojio glanced at him, a question in her eyes. She smiled. Where can Brother Mo be? Of course he's beside me. How did you know we're back? The news on the internet. You guys sure are eye-catching Rolls-Royce. Outsiders might be looking at the liveliness, but we are looking at the details. Lin Feng laughed heartily. He was clearly very happy. Just the back view of you and Captain. I can tell with one look. Bojio held her forehead. Even a naive person like Lin Feng could tell. Qin Mo's fans would definitely be able to recognize the tall and slender figure. Fortunately, Grandpa Butler had done the follow-up work. No one would be able to find them. I'll inform everyone and meet you guys now. Lin Feng was about to move. Bojio glanced at him from the side. Tomorrow. Tomorrow? Lin Feng frowned. Since they were back, it would be better to meet them as soon as possible. The Asian Cup was starting and their competition would be arranged by their captain. Bojio replied. MMH. She could see the Almighty's wariness. Wariness meant that he didn't like it. After all, for someone with amnesia, it would be difficult for him to accept the settings given to him in just one day. From a certain point of view, it was too much. Bojio wanted them to meet as soon as possible, but she seemed to have forgotten something. The Almighty needed a period of acceptance. Chapter 1286. Lin Feng looked at the phone that had been hung up, feeling a little uneasy. The uneasiness started to grow along with the comments online. Just as Bojio had said, even he could recognize them from the back. Some of the fans could recognize them too. The already soft voices of resistance. For some reason, it grew louder. When the public relations department contacted Feng Yi, they wanted to tell him that someone was behind the scenes, but they couldn't pinpoint the exact company. That was strange. But this time Feng Yi didn't care. He glanced at the photo online, glancing up with a smile. Assistant Su. Boss Feng. The assistant hadn't expected Feng Yi to look at him in such a manner. Feng Yi lit a cigarette, holding it between his fingers. Some stories can only be told to people who understand. Many people wouldn't understand how much effort she put in to bring Qin Mo back. So forget it, it's good that he's back. Assistant Su felt that Boss Feng was different. Feng Shang felt the same way. His brother was indeed different. In front of others, he was still the playful Fox Feng who wouldn't allow anyone to take advantage of Supreme Alliance. But behind others, he was a heavy smoker. It seemed as though he knew something but couldn't change it. Feng Shang stammered as he asked the person, but he couldn't get an answer. But he was happy. They had seen the photo online. Coco and him, along with the other teams, were all happy on the official Weibo, tagging Spadesy. At the dining table, Bojio was still thinking of a way to get the Almighty to accept her. After much thought, she decided to find evidence to convince him. That was the most direct method. The Almighty had always been a suspicious person. And now he was probably even more so. The hot pot lasted for a long time. Qin Emo watched as the fellow lowered his head to scoop up the mutton for him. For some reason, the food in his mouth tasted good. The old butler took in the scene as well. Did his young lord bring back a little princess to pamper? Young Master Qin was such a big man. Couldn't he use his chopsticks? Letting out a long sigh, the old butler knew in his heart that the words he had told the young master to be reserved were basically treated as trash. The hot pot is greasy, and there's Chinese oolong tea in the pot. Young master, do you want to drink it here or go to the sofa? The old butler picked up his pocket watch and glanced at it. Even though he had come to Jiang City, his British aura hadn't changed at all. Both places aren't good. I'll head back to my room with Brother Emo. Bojio turned, wanting to grab a tissue to wipe her mouth. Unexpectedly, the moment she moved, she felt something on her face. It was the Almighty's fingertips, slowly caressing her lips. His movements were very natural. In order to make it easier for the Almighty to clean her up, she lifted her handsome face, not forgetting to smile. When Qin Emo saw her smile, there was only one thought in his mind. How could this prey be so likable? The old butler, who had always been a gentleman, coughed lightly and said, "Then I'll go and clean up another room." Too troublesome. Bojio smiled mischievously. "There aren't enough rooms. I can share a room with Brother Emo." Qin Emo glanced at the double-story apartment in front of him, his fingers still feeling a certain someone's delicate skin. He didn't expose her. The old butler inhaled deeply. It seemed like it was a waste to find such a huge room for his young lord. There were 8 rooms. How could it not be enough? But Grandfather Butler knew what his young lord was thinking. He lifted the teapot with his white-gloved hand. "I'll send it to your room and bring a set of pajamas for young Master Qin." "All right," Bojio replied without the slightest hint of embarrassment or heartbeat. Qin Emo supported his chin with his hand, his thin lips curving up without a trace. He had never seen such a proactive prey. It was a rare sight. The old butler was still observing Qin Emo. He had wanted to discuss something with the man, but when he took off his shirt and revealed something on his neck, his fingers trembled. He turned towards Bojio. That was why. He remembered that his young lord had asked for many such amulets when she had been young. At that time, she had been like a little monk. Even though she had been at the 5th Avenue, she had been close to a senior monk. That senior monk's amulet wasn't common. The old butler retracted his gaze. He didn't stay any longer. Even so, Qin Emo noticed it. When he changed his sleepiness, his dark eyes flickered under the light. Bojio wasn't in a hurry to drink the tea. She could tell that Grandfather Butler was looking for her. She reached out and pushed Qin Emo into the bathroom. "Brother Emo, shower first. We can talk after." Qin Emo smiled. It was a charming smile, but there was a dark fog floating in his eyes. "What a pity." "What's a pity?" Bojio arched a brow. Qin Emo bent down, his breath landing on her ear. "I thought we would shower together. After all, we are lovers, aren't we? It's a pity that even you are hiding something from me. How can I be at ease with such prey by my side?" With this in mind, Qin Mo's eyes dimmed. Bojio couldn't see from this angle. She hugged his waist and smiled. "No, Brother Emo, I realized that you like to tease me." Qin Emo didn't have any warning signs when she hugged him. He thought for a moment and scoffed. She was coaxing him again. She knew how to do it. "I want to shower together." Bojio's smile didn't diminish. "But I have to talk to Grandfather Butler first. I have to tell him that no matter what you become, you will always be my little Princess Qin." Qin Emo looked at her. After a moment he laughed coldly. "Little Princess Qin? Where did she get her nickname from?" "Brother Emo, you loved it when I called you that." Bojio looked sad. "You even forgot about that." Sigh. Hearing her sigh, Qin Emo lifted the corner of his lips, revealing a thought-provoking expression. Then he held on to her waist, his breath seductive. "Don't worry, even if I forget everything, I won't forget how I want you." Which man would like to be called a little princess? "Little gangster, don't you know how to lie?" Qin Emo found it amusing. His kiss carried a sense of punishment. He bent down and nibbled on her neck. His breath was a little hot and imprinted on her fair skin. There was a wave of irresistible itchiness. Bojio didn't know where to put her hands. In the end, she arched her back. Brother Mo. Chapter 1287. Flirting. He only knew how to flirt. After pushing him away for a long time, Bojo rubbed her own face. She remembered the Almighty's words and laughed softly. Did he think she didn't dare? Once she was done talking to Grandfather Butler, she would look for him in the bathroom. She could use this chance to record the Almighty's actions. She could play how he had flirted with her for him after he regained his memory. That could be considered a dark history. Bojo pressed her fingers against her lips, smiling nonchalantly. Grandfather Butler and his young lord had a tacit understanding. He was already waiting in the living room, the pocket watch still in his hand. Bojo walked over. Don't worry. The 3 words made the old butler sigh. His current situation is very unstable. No, that's not right. It should be said that his current situation is very stable. He even knows to disguise his killing intent. Young master, you should know how dangerous he is. He didn't hurt anyone. The moment she finished her sentence, she knew she was being unreasonable. After all, the Almighty had tried to hypnotize others before, but she had stopped him from doing so. The old butler swept a glance at her clean and smiling face. With you around, he will definitely restrain himself if he wants you. Unexpectedly, his young lord laughed even more. MMH, Grandfather Butler, I'm telling you, that's how he cares about me in the past and now. Old butler. Was that the main point? Bojo had been stifled when she had been in the military. She had only told little Blackie about her love life, which wasn't enough. Now that she finally had the chance to meet Grandfather Butler, she grabbed a pillow and propped her chin up. She smiled sweetly. He doesn't say it, but his actions are honest, and he is even jealous of himself. He has always been adorable. The old butler maintained his gentlemanly image. Once again, I understand the Chinese saying that a grown girl can't be kept at home. Grandfather Butler, if that's what you're worried about, you don't have to worry at all. I'll stay at home and trick Brother Mo into marrying into our family, Bojo suggested with a smile. The old butler caressed his temples. He knew his young lord was determined. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Qin family would agree to their precious young master marrying into the Yin family. The Yin family would probably go crazy. His young master had hardened his heart and only wanted this person. You should know that he's pretending to be good to you right now. Anyone who is hypnotized will have a huge change in personality, and it's the same for him. I'm afraid he's interested in you now, but young lord, what happens when he loses interest in you? The old butler was to the point. Chapter 1288. So Grandfather Butler, look, he doesn't remember anything and is still protecting the things I gave him. This isn't interest. Bojo glanced over, her eyes dark. Besides, I'm not a good person. Even if it's interest, if I can make him fall in love with me once and twice, I can make him fall in love with me a 3rd time. The old butler paused for a moment before breaking into a smile. Young lord, you should know that I will support whatever decision you make. But there's one thing, I won't let anyone bully you. That cold fellow from the Qin family always made the girl take the initiative. He wasn't a gentleman at all. Bojo thought. Now that the Almighty wasn't bullying her, she wanted to bully him instead. She thought for a moment before bringing the small accessories in the room next door upstairs. She was going to take a photo later. The old butler knew that his young lord had been waiting for someone ever since she was young. She had always been very familiar with his good points. When she was young, she would have big round eyes. Whenever she saw a child, she would comment, Grandfather Butler, let me tell you, he isn't as good looking as my pet. My pet just has to stand there, and he doesn't need to say anything to make people like him. Really, he's really attractive. He would even tie my shoelaces for me. Every time my shoelaces were untied, he would tie them for me, praising it so much that it could only exist in the heavens and not on earth. It was just a longing in the deepest part of her heart. Now he was by her side. His young lord smiled a lot more. Let's just leave it at that. Grandpa Butler wanted to see if there was any way to let that cold kid of the Qin family recover his memory faster. Qin Mo knew that his memory was incomplete. But to him, memory didn't seem to be of much use. Before he came, he was thinking about what his prey would say. As for what her grandfather Butler would say, Chinemo didn't need to think to know. It was to remind her to be careful of him. Heh. Chinemo chuckled and hid himself. He was like a demon. He appeared silently and left without a sound. A certain person's words seemed to be repeating in his ears. It seemed to seep in bit by bit. Unconsciously, the corners of his lips would rise. Chinemo didn't want her to know that he could hear her words. Hence, he filled the bathtub with water in advance. The phone she had given him was still in the room. She was indeed an idiot. She had even given him a phone. He clicked on the desktop. There weren't many icons on it. The one that was opened the most was a game. Chinemo glanced at it, but didn't open it. Instead, he opened the webpage and searched for something. Just as he said, after listening to the conversation in the living room, Chinemo really sat in the bathtub and waited for a certain someone. His body was half tilted, and the white foam in the bathtub rose up, along with the misty water vapor. It made him look more abstinent. However, it was still different. Even he himself did not realize that there was a smile on his lips. This was the scene Bojio saw when she entered with her things. The sexy Almighty's body leaned against the bathtub, his long legs crossed lazily. The light shone down and refracted on the pure white walls. The man's entire face was illuminated by the light. He was so handsome that it made people feel a little dizzy. She didn't know what he was looking at. It could make him smile lazily, without any defense, and even with a little pride. Chapter 1289. He seemed to have sensed her presence. The Almighty, who was still swiping his phone, lifted his brows. His arrogance disappeared, as though he was trying to hide it. Then he freed one of his hands and gestured in her direction. That hand had distinct joints and was slender and beautiful. Under the light, it seemed to be transparent. Bojio thought to herself, Grandfather Butler had said so much, but he hadn't mentioned anything about how to deal with the Almighty's honey trap. But on second thought, there wasn't a need to deal with it. When the Almighty used his honey trap, it was best to pounce on her. There was a saying that was right. When the Almighty wanted to seduce someone, it didn't matter. Bojio walked over, curious. What are you looking at? If the Almighty saw the icon on her phone, he would have a sudden impulse to play a game. That way, he would know their intimacy level in the game. Unexpectedly, he chuckled. Do you want to know? Bojio nodded. Chinmo's voice was calm. Come closer, I'll show you. So mysterious? Bojio took another step towards the bathtub, and was about to tilt her head. Just then he raised his hand and grabbed her wrist. There was a loud splash. Her entire body was soaked in the bathtub, her hair and body wet. Especially the white shirt she was wearing. It became faintly translucent. He could see the bandages inside, as well as the soft semicircle, white and curved. As for everything else, it was a mess. He took the opportunity to hold her waist, allowing her to sit in his arms. The steam started to spread and the temperature of the water was slightly high. The moment Bojio entered, her body trembled. Moreover, the way he was hugging her made her half a head taller. This way, his breath would land on her chest, accompanied by the heat in the bathroom, making it impossible for her to hide. My sugar daddy, have you forgotten what I said on the plane? On the plane? Bojio arched a brow. Chinemo caressed her waist, his voice carrying a smile. When there's no one around, you can take out the books I gave to sugar daddy to read and learn. Aren't you curious about what I'm reading? Take it. A phone was shoved into Bojio's palm. She glanced over instinctively. Bojio was stunned by his gaze. What was the Almighty looking at? Was it completely devoid of godhood? Overbearing CEO falls in love with me? She usually wouldn't open such a book. However, the title of the book wasn't important at this point. The main thing was that when the Almighty flipped to this page, the male and female leads were flirting. The feeling of the plot was there, and the location was still the office. The corners of Chinmo's lips curled up again, as he watched a certain someone's thin lips slightly pursed. He leaned over while hugging her, the heat from his body pressing against her ear. His smile was low and pleasant. But it's a pity that this book doesn't have a bathroom scene. But it doesn't matter. Compared to those useless descriptions, I'm better at this. Before Bojio could react, he kissed her through her wet shirt. The buttons of the shirt were bitten off by him. It was a light kiss, but it made her hands tremble. Chapter 1290. Try what? The things described in the books? Even a gangster like Bojo couldn't help blushing at the thought of that scene. Besides, the Almighty's hand was still holding onto her waist. He didn't seem to have any intention of letting go. Instead, he peeled off her shirt, dragged her back and kissed her. She couldn't see anything clearly. Even the bathtub was filled with white foam. Through the thick heat, the fog seemed to be able to reach her eyes. The scene under the light was beautiful. It was probably because they were both so good-looking that the air was even hotter. At this moment, Chin Mo was like a dark noble that appeared in stories. Anyone who liked British movies would know. Handsome vampire nobles loved to drag young ladies into the bathtub and give them the pleasure they had never experienced before. Chin Mo was doing the same thing. However, he didn't bite her throat. Instead, he planted multiple kisses on her collarbone before moving downwards. It was so tempting that it made her soul tremble. Bojo didn't know when her jeans had disappeared. Her overly long shirt reached her thighs and floated in the water like flower petals. Her fair and translucent shoulders were snow-white under the light. It was easy to arouse one's thoughts. From the start to the end, Chin Mo hugged her waist tightly, never letting her leave his arms. When he saw this scene, his gaze deepened, and he bit her shoulder. His breathing also became a little unstable, especially when he heard the moans coming from the person in his embrace. He could not help but gasp. If it wasn't for a voice reminding him, he couldn't continue. How could he allow his prey to control his thoughts? As a guide, the person who should be grasped should be the other party. But it was this person's every even the way she looked at him with tears in her eyes, that made him want to have her completely at that moment. He felt inexplicably irritated. Chin Mo took a deep breath and retracted his hand. Then he pulled the towel and wrapped her up. He couldn't come into contact with her for now. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to control himself. Was the feeling of her skin too good? Or was she really like a siren? She looked at you clearly, but it made you want to destroy her. Bojo didn't know why the Almighty was suddenly awake. There was a splash of water. By the time she reacted, her head was already covered by a white towel. You can wash the rest yourself. I'll get you a glass of milk. My sugar daddy, you still need to nourish yourself. You'll feel better when you're chubbier. Bojo. Grandpa Butler said he was pretending to be too gentle. How was this gentle? Wasn't his tongue just as venomous? The Almighty would probably feel uncomfortable if he didn't have a sharp tongue for a day, especially when it came to speaking ill of her. Bojo pressed the towel over her head with one hand. Suddenly, she broke into a smile. Did he think that she couldn't tell? Every time he flirted with her until she couldn't take it anymore, he would suddenly stop. It seemed that he didn't want her. Bojo smiled again, a devilish glint in her eyes. There was one thing that the Almighty seemed to have gotten wrong. Should he tell her about it? He didn't have the final say. Whoosh. Chapter 1291. There were still water droplets on her jade-white ankles. Her back was wrapped in a towel. Her entire body was covered in water, glowing under the sunlight. Her eyes were as black as the fog. Indeed, she looked like a siren. Especially when she smiled. The corners of her lips curved slightly. She walked tall and straight, exuding an extreme sense of beauty. She didn't seem embarrassed because of her appearance. Bojo touched her cheeks, looking suave. She had originally planned to pounce on him and get it over with. Who knew that before she could do anything, that person would pull her into his arms again? Wrapped around her was a dry towel. Even her eyes were wrapped in it. Brother Mo, Bojo felt that the Almighty wasn't fighting fair. She couldn't even see. How was she supposed to attack? Chin Mo watched as the little hooligan tried to act cool after being drenched. Now she looked like an exasperated kitten, stretching out her claws in an attempt to act coquettishly. Mh. He arched a brow, pressing her head onto his shoulder. Bojo finally calmed down. She realized that the towel wasn't just around her, there were two of them. The Almighty was also wrapped inside. She was in direct contact with his skin. That was how it should be. Why was he trying to distance himself from her? Bojio's eyes turned into crescents, her hands about to move. What are you trying to do? Chin-mo freed one hand, pressing down on her restless claws. He arched a brow, finding it funny. It seems like my sugar daddy likes me a lot. Bojio lifted her head, looking at Chin-mo with a wicked smile. That's right, that's right. Even if you like me, you can't touch me. Chin-mo adjusted her, looking as though he was taking care of a domestic prey. Turn around and look at the mirror. Bojio arched a brow. What am I doing? Blow your hair. She had to do something that wouldn't let her imagination run wild to divert her attention. Hence, the Almighty came out with a hairdryer. He raised one hand high, his aura strong. Bojio took a moment. She couldn't force him. It wouldn't be good to bully the Almighty when he lost his memory. All right, blow your hair. When she turned around, her entire back was leaning against his chest. The two of them were wrapped in the same towel. It was neither too big nor too small, just perfect. Even the Almighty wouldn't be able to take advantage of them in such a position. When Chin-mo heard her sigh, he laughed again. Why? Are you disappointed that I blew your hair? What bad things are you thinking about all day long? I want to sleep with you. Bojio felt the gentle breeze blowing over her head. She smiled brightly. It's so obvious. Brother Mo, can't you tell? Chin-mo looked at that face and couldn't help but reach out to pinch it. I'm very expensive. Let's dry your silver hair first. Silver hair? Bojio tilted her head. The most popular granny gray. It's quite handsome. Isn't it handsome? Chin-mo met her clear eyes. The tear mole was especially obvious. Her nose, mouth, and even her collarbone were beautiful. His body moved, bending down to kiss her lips. His eyes were deep. You're really pretty. Until now, she was the most pleasing prey he had ever seen. Not as pretty as you. Bojio's words were true. Little Princess Chin had been pretty since she was young. Chin-mo ran his fingers through the youngster's hair slowly. The hairdryer was still blowing gently. Are you sure you want to use the word pretty to describe me? No man would like to have such an adjective on him. Devastatingly beautiful. Bojio thought about the idiom she had learned. Chin-mo arched a brow. Femme fatale? These 4 words should fit the description, right? Chin-mo laughed and said slowly. Why don't you say I'm Daji who bewitches the nation? How can you be compared to Daji? Bojio laughed. You're much prettier than Daji. Since you're so comfortable to hug, I won't throw you out the window. Chin-mo had just thought of this when the youngster continued. Brother Mo, I'm definitely an incapable ruler in ancient times. If you're Daji and you want to bewitch the nation, I'll definitely let you do it. Don't you think I'm too rash? If others say bad things about you, I'll want to beat them up. No wonder you always said I was rash when I was young. I'm quite rash. When Chin-mo heard this, he turned off the hairdryer and tapped her face rhythmically with his fingers. I don't think you're rash at all. Every word she said seemed to be able to seep into her heart. She was so cunning. I'm still rash. For example, I really want to sleep with you. Bojio tilted her head, her tone lazy. So Brother Mo, if I were to touch you, you have to stop me. I can't stand seduction. You can use it on me more often. Chin-mo laughed softly. He wasn't pretending anymore. He placed the hairdryer aside, his aura a little distant. You can even tell that I'm using seduction? It's a pity you didn't use it all the way. Bojio laughed lightly and sneezed. You didn't even let me have a taste of the sweetness. Chin-mo glanced at the person in front of him and frowned. Then he lifted his arms and carried her horizontally. He walked into the room and stuffed her into the blanket. Ah! Bojio exclaimed. You're covering me so much, it's too heavy. There was only a blanket between them. After removing it, he didn't even let her have a taste of the tofu. Where's the medicine? Chin-mo didn't answer her question. Bojio was pressed down and couldn't move. What medicine? Flu medicine, Chin-mo replied, pressing the person who was about to pop her head back in. Bojio suddenly understood. The Almighty was concerned about her sneeze and thought she was sick again. Was that why he was looking for medicine? In the end, she managed to get a taste of the sweetness. Bojio only revealed a pair of eyes. Under the blanket, her lips were curved into a smile. Chinemo tilted his head. When he saw this scene, he knew he had overreacted. His fingers paused for a moment before he sat by the bed, smiling nonchalantly. Are you proud? No, actually I'm feeling a little cold and uncomfortable. It must be from the bath just now. Bojio pressed her head to make herself look more sincere. Chinmo's smile deepened. Cold? Then add another quilt. The Almighty was a man of his words. He pulled open the wardrobe and retrieved a summer blanket, placing it over her body. Are you warmer now? MH. What else could she say? This was her act and she had to finish it. I'm just a little thirsty. Drinking water would cool her down. Chinemo arched a brow. Thirsty? I'll get you a cup of hot water. How about that? Hot water? Bojio waved her hands. Forget it, I'm not that thirsty. Since the Almighty was so black-bellied, he might as well continue to seduce her. Chapter 1292. The Almighty was still smiling when he said this, his breath landing beside her ear. It was slightly seductive. Bojio tilted her head. Ice and fire, hot and cold at the same time. It's not good for my body if this continues. Chinemo stilled, not expecting such an answer. His thin lips landed on her forehead. What about now? It's hot. Bojio smiled. Brother Emo, I just ate a piece of candy. Do you want a kiss? I guarantee it'll be sweet. Chinemo removed a layer of the blanket. After hearing her words, he arched a brow lazily. In your dreams, little gangster. Sleeping on the same bed without a kiss is the real gangster. Bojio took a deep breath, her pale face tinged with a tinge of red. She wanted to kick the blanket away. The moment she moved, Chinemo pressed down on her legs, his voice deep. Do you want to catch a cold? The blanket is thick. Bojio didn't want to hug him through the blanket as it would be too distant. Chinemo glanced at her rascally look. Do you regret exposing my honey trap? Yes. Bojio watched as he reached out to pull her over and change the blanket. The weight on her body was light, but the temperature was comfortable. She took the opportunity to hug his waist. Chinemo didn't reject her, but he pointed at a certain prey. Don't move your hands. It's a little difficult, Bojio replied seriously. Why don't I play for a while? With both hands, I'll be able to maintain some self-control. MMH, Chinemo replied, his emotions indiscernible. Bojio knew he had seen through her probing. She took the phone over and thought for a moment. Brother Emo, what? Chinemo leaned against the headboard, his fingers twirling a poker card. Bojio tilted her head. Do you want to take a look at your official Weibo account? You want me to take a look? Chinmo's gaze deepened when he asked this. Bojio nodded. I want you to know there are many people waiting for you. Chinemo didn't say anything. He emptied one hand, his expression nonchalant. It didn't matter if he took a look or not. He wasn't interested in the past. But from the looks of it, she wanted him to take a look. Chinmo's breath turned cold. Well, no one would like the current him. It was probably the same for her. Chinemo lifted his thin lips, his eyes cold. Phone. Bojio moved her fingers and turned off the screen. Forget it. Chinmo's expression was noble. MH. If you don't like it, then don't. Bojio laughed. It doesn't matter if I lose my memory or not. It's better this way, no one will snatch it from me. Chinmo's gaze trembled, but he quickly regained his composure. He said slowly. Then you have to watch over me. I will, Bojio replied, gripping the phone in her hands. Chinemo glanced over. Aren't we going to play games? I thought you didn't like it. I'm not fighting anymore. Bojio pressed the tip of her tongue against her cheek. Chinemo tapped on her phone screen. If you like it, I'll watch you play. That way, you won't be up to no good. Bojio arched a brow. Brother Emo, if you don't say the last sentence, Sugar Daddy will like you more. That's a pity, the last sentence is what I really mean. Chinemo patted her face lightly, his voice lazy and pleasant. Let's start, let me see how you play. Chapter 1293. The game's music started playing. This was the first time Chinemo found someone so thick-skinned and likable. But it was understandable. A domestic prey would definitely be pleasing to the eye. At this moment, Bojo entered the page and chose her character. She was using an alternate account, so her level wasn't eye-catching. But the name, Chin Emo, arched a brow. Little sweetheart Chin is mine? Bojo's scalp turned numb. Brother Emo, don't mind the details. Why would I? You're my sugar daddy after all. Chin Emo leaned over and bit her ear. Bojo trembled, the tips of her ears turning red. Chin Emo was satisfied, his gaze returning to the screen. There's someone talking on the screen. Bojo saw it too. It was someone fighting for a position in the wilderness. She didn't allow it. That person was obviously unhappy. He didn't switch and continued to drag it out. It wasn't good for development to play with a temper. Bojo knew that and didn't say much since it was common sense to fight for money before capturing the person. But her teammate was still talking. The one playing as an assassin, look at my level and look at yours. Can't you tell I'm 2 levels higher than you? Why are you trying to snatch it from me? Let me tell you, don't scam me or I'll complain about you. Chin Mo's eyes dimmed as he listened to the words that came from the phone. His initial disinterest turned to one person. What is he doing? That was when Bojo realized that the Almighty had really lost his memory. He was just like a new person. He's farming. Assassins have to farm beasts to raise their finances, or they won't be able to develop. Every assassin has to think of a way to get to level 4 as soon as possible, and the most effective way is to farm beasts. Hearing this, Chin Emo smiled, reached out his hand, and asked her to change her route. What is it? Bojo was confused. What was the Almighty up to? Chin Emo tapped the screen. I'm playing. You know how to play. Bojo's eyes shone with surprise. Chin Emo replied faintly. No, I saw what you did just now. There's a button that allows you to farm beasts. That was right. But Bojo watched as the Almighty stood motionless in the bushes, waiting for someone to farm beasts. What was he doing? Very quickly, Bojo understood his intentions. That was because the voice of their jungler rang out again. F***CK, I've been farming for half a day. Next, that person realized that no matter if it was blue, red, or any other small monster, they would all be accurately snatched away at the last slash. He was thoroughly cursing over there. Bojo watched as the Almighty lifted his fingers slightly and pressed the voice button on his phone, continuing with his job of snatching kills. I'm hanging up. F***CK. This time he typed. His teammates were helpless. All they wanted was for that high-ranked player to play well. That person snorted and split the message into 3 parts. Tell that little sweetheart Chin to stop stealing my beasts, and I'll go out. With that kind of positioning, what else can he do other than steal my wild beasts? Anyone can kill him. Bojo glanced over and reached for her phone. She typed a few words. You don't want to come out? Then don't come out. As soon as she finished speaking, she controlled the game character in her hand. Like a cold gust of wind, she swept towards the wilderness on the other side. Her clothes fluttered, and even her sword glowed with a white light. You're courting death, the assassin said. Chapter 1294. Double kill. Double kill. Double kill? How could it be a double kill? The assassin who had been yelling just a moment ago suddenly froze. He looked at the screen. After the kill, the elegant figure used a skill and leaped back to his original position. This caused the enemy sorcerer to chase after him. That person didn't return to the tower. Instead, he hid in the bushes after collecting a wave of soldiers. At this moment, he had recovered to half his HP. On the map, that person leaped out. The sorcerer saw this and quickly attacked. However, that person dodged the freeze with a zigzag movement. Then the sound of Sword God rang out. It was very rhythmic. Once, twice, thrice. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Triple kill. Triple kill. It was continuous, without a break. Even the time couldn't be measured in minutes because it was too fast. The team members were still reviving in the spring. Looking at the scene on the map, everyone was stunned. The enemy sorcerer who died even typed a string of words on the public chat. She probably didn't expect to be killed. After all, she was at full HP. And she remembered that the opponent was at low HP. Vampiric knife. This person used a vampiric knife? He used it so early, how confident was he in his fighting style? His teammates glanced at each other. Before they could even react, Yichen had already left. The game's music blared again. Tyrant has been killed. The entire team's experience has doubled. The first to react wasn't his teammates but the enemy assassin. Ah, I've been fighting Tyrant for half a day. However, just as he was typing, what he didn't expect was that after killing 2 monsters, the white figure leaped back and aimed an electrode at his back, followed by a big move. He jumped back in fright and returned to the city with low HP. That scared me. I almost died. I remember that the jungler isn't high level. The high level one is the other one. Why is he so fierce? I don't even dare to leave the tower. Me too. What kind of maneuver is that? It's unbelievable. Compared to the opponent's panic. On the other side, the assassin who was yelling that he wouldn't go out unless he was allowed to have fun turned red and white. He pressed on his phone. You're not a substitute player, are you? Bojio didn't bother about him. She cleared her own jungle in a few moments. She didn't just clear her own jungle. When she plundered the opponent's jungle, she would definitely take some wild boars with her. She successfully explained the phrase, "Your jungle is my home." She didn't snatch the title of Pig Hierarch for nothing. His DPS was the highest in the entire game. Wherever he went, he would either take away a player's head or a wild monster. It wasn't that the opponent didn't want to chase after her, but the hero she was controlling was too agile and fast. If they went after him alone, they would definitely be killed in seconds. When the 3 of them chased after him, he ran away. It was as if he was walking someone. After walking them for a while, he attacked them from behind and dealt a set of damage. In the blink of an eye, their long-ranged ADC was crippled. A score of 0-6 was going against the wind. In the middle of the game, when the opponent saw Bojio's figure on the screen, he didn't even dare to come out. The saddest thing was that without control, it wasn't safe to stand under the tower alone. The white figure was so fierce that he could cross the tower and kill. Moreover, his HP recovered extremely quickly. This wasn't fun at all. Chapter 1295. Those who played this game would usually want to score higher. Besides, everyone knew that a skilled jungler could bring up the tempo of the match. It wasn't easy to find such a god. Before it was over, someone started to send a message. Jungler little brother, why don't you add me as a friend? I'm so cute. Can't you stop killing me and help me score higher? Under normal circumstances, Bojio wouldn't look at the public chat. But today Chinemo was here and he would look. When he saw the message, Chinemo broke into a smile. It was a beautiful smile, but there was a hint of coldness in his lips. Is she flirting with you? Bojio finally noticed the next sentence, freeing her hand to reply. Not little brother. The other side continued to act coquettishly. What is he if not little brother? Uncle? Uncle is good too. Uncle is more charming, moi. It's little sister. The moment Bojio finished typing, she was once again distracted by the Almighty. He hugged her with one hand and tapped on her phone with the other. This time, the Almighty's target was clear. He laughed nonchalantly. Just kill her. Bojio. That wasn't a good way to treat a girl, right? The Almighty probably didn't know how fierce she was when she grabbed someone. What is it? Chinemo smiled faintly at her face, his fingers tapping against hers, bringing a wave of numbness. Are you really going to have tender feelings for the fairer sex? He paused as though he knew what Bojio liked. Send her back to the city, there will be a reward. The Almighty's last sentence was too tempting. She would send the coquettish one back to the city. Bojio lifted her sword. While everyone was still immersed in the words "its little sister," she leaped over and killed the confused sorcerer in the middle lane. The moment the sorcerer saw that he was dead, he typed, F***CK. The next moment, the other side burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. Who asked you to pretend to be a girl? You're screwed this time. Frequent surfers would know that there was a popular saying in the game. If you realized your opponent was good at jungling, pretend to be a girl and act coquettishly. 90% of the time, you would be able to avoid death. That mage had been playing this trick for a long time, and it was a tried and tested move. That was how unlucky he was today. Soon he realized a problem. The worst part was that he had just died. Rather, wherever he went, that jungler followed them wherever they went. They didn't even care about the big picture, just to kill him. The male magician was dumbfounded. Unless he didn't step out of the house, he would definitely die if he did. What kind of grudge? He typed on the public chat. Handsome Missy, you don't have to go so far, right? I was just acting coquettishly, but you caught me so tightly that I have nothing left to live for. Bojo arched a brow when she read the message. The Almighty told her not to reply, and to continue killing. She didn't agree to this. Instead, she stopped and typed out a string of words. My boyfriend saw you acting coquettishly just now. He's watching me right now. He's jealous. I have to think of a way to make him happy. A string of dots and dots appeared on the public screen. It wasn't uncommon to see people flaunting their affection in games. But in the past, they had never been abused like this. But today, in order to make her boyfriend happy, a girl kept catching people? To be honest, these big men were really abused. Chapter 1296. Wasn't this something a boy would do to coax a girl? When they played games, it was always their girlfriends who played meat, and they who played jungles. They had to die in front of their girlfriends. Why was it that everyone else's style was the same? Tell me, how could it not be cruel? There was no way to play this game. After being captured 4 times, the male mage never left the city again. Every time Bojo was done, she would glance at the Almighty. Yes, he was smiling. There was warmth in his eyes as well. Sigh, little Princess Chin was so cute. What could she do? Continue grabbing. No one could do anything to Bojo. The current situation also confirmed what she had said at the beginning. From start to finish, there was no chance for the other jungler to come out. The man couldn't say anything else. It was a victory without any suspense. The game went on for 10 minutes. Bojo's maneuvering was basically a show. There were even people who directly recorded it, and the title was very appropriate. Have you ever seen a handsome young lady kill someone to make her boyfriend happy? When this video was first released, not many people watched it. But then there was a comment below. Is the jungler really a girl? His positioning, mechanics, and hand speed are all unbelievable. His skill level is close to that of a pro player, right? Professional? Don't scare me. Why would I scare you? Look closely. Even some VIP streamers wouldn't be able to play at such a pace. Most importantly, the jungler says she's a girl. I have to say something. I feel like this person's movements are a little familiar. I feel the same way. I won't say her name. I don't want to bring shame to her. But I don't think it's possible. She has disappeared and won't come back. Ahem, I think so too. Let me give you a hint. I'm a fan who likes to be cute on the spot. Look at this ID. It says Little Secretary Chin Chin. Little Secretary. This won't do. The couple fans are starting to make up stories. What I can't stand the most is that my boyfriend is watching from the side and is jealous, so I have to make him happy. I think it's better not to make wild guesses. Perhaps the name is just a coincidence. The Asian Cup is about to start and Almighty Chin isn't back yet. Besides, it has already been proven that Spadesy is a girl. As a passerby, I just want to say that she should restrain herself. For the sake of Supreme Alliance, she shouldn't come out again. Chapter 1297. Fengyi had actually told them during the meeting not to reply to any comments on the internet, be it good or bad. He had even set a limit on their internet usage. He was worried that their mental state would be affected. In the esports industry, there were too many people who didn't understand. From the disdain in the past to now, there were finally people who wouldn't say that it was just a gamer. Countless people were putting in hard work. There were also people who found substitutes to do live broadcasts. In order to earn money, they formed a model to please the fans. The fans were the father. As time went by, more and more people felt that they had the right to decide what the team should be like. However, some people seem to have forgotten. This was esports. On the competitive stage, ability was the final word. People in the industry, when they first came into contact with this industry, they didn't see much potential in it. The reason was simple. They loved it. Perhaps it was hard for girls to understand that feeling. Sitting in a dormitory, pushing the opponent's city, playing games until midnight, kicking their friend's chair, taking out their phone to order takeout, chewing on a chicken wing to start another round. Days like this would never come again after they left school. Hence they cherished it. Similarly, they hoped that the team that appeared in their youth could go further. They understood what it meant to support them, to buy a ticket and watch them compete unscrupulously like before, winning and even winning for the country. Not like now, where they fell into anxiety again and again. Every time, it was because of some people's love. Was there psychological pressure? Esports players didn't just have psychological pressure. In terms of training hours and computer time, no one could beat them. Simple office workers or students. At most, they would be scolded by their superiors. As for them, they would be attacked by everyone on the internet. They couldn't retaliate. The most they could do was say that they had low standards. Probably no one would care about the lifespan of the industry. Take Wuxia for example. No one knew why he liked to smoke. It could relieve his fatigue and prevent him from worrying too much about his neck. The back of his neck really hurt. When the training was intense, he would sit in front of the computer for 8 to 9 hours. He was also worried that he wouldn't play well during the competition. When the pressure was high, the quality of his sleep was extremely poor. Even now, he would doze off in the day, giving off a feeling that he couldn't wake up. Many people said that it was the aura of the Almighties. He was so lazy that he looked like an otherworldly expert. In fact, they were really sleepy and wanted to sleep whenever they had the time. They had to adjust their mentality by themselves. Lin Feng had originally thought that he would be reprimanded after his rebuttal, so he was prepared. After all, Feng Yi had also called. But this time, for some reason, the voice was different from before. Did you see CEO Qin? We were supposed to meet today, but Little Spade told us to wait until tomorrow. Lin Feng might be naive, but he could tell from his tone. Fox Feng, have you been hiding something from us recently? Feng Yi was still sitting on the office chair. He leaned back and said, there is one thing, but I wasn't sure before. Now I have a feeling. Lin Feng. Chapter 1298. What do you mean? Fox Feng, are you joking? Even if Captain retires, he would still be better than us. Lin Feng was extremely anxious. To a certain extent, Feng Yi knew every member of Supreme Alliance. Lin Feng was a naive person. The more anxious he was, the more uneasy he was. Feng Yi reached out to press between his brows. There will always be special circumstances. Is Captain's hand completely failing? Lin Feng took 2 steps forward with the phone in his hand. That's fine as long as Captain watches over us when we play. Actually, I don't agree with Captain playing again. The doctor once said that his hand isn't suitable for gaming, so this is a good chance. Lin Feng spoke more and more. In the end, he raised his hand and ruffled his hair fiercely, his voice wilting. Fox Feng, what exactly happened to Captain? Feng Yi knew he was mentally prepared. Amnesia. He forgot everything, including games and... With that he paused adding, we. The word we seemed to have hit Lin Feng's head. He stilled, his eyes turning red. That's why Little Spade brought him back. It's confidential, I don't know the details. Feng Yi tilted his head and lit a cigarette, his voice slow. But fortunately he wasn't alone. He knew a little about what had happened 3 years ago. It was the same for Lin Feng and the others. That person came back with a hand injury and a high fever, just to be able to make it for the competition. But there were some things that could be missed. What they couldn't forget was the injury on his shoulder. When he changed the bandage, even the ignorant could tell it was a gunshot wound. What did he do when he wasn't around? They weren't sure. But every time he came back, there would be news a few days later about which case had been solved and which overseas compatriots had been sent back safely. Once, twice, thrice. After many times, it would no longer be a coincidence. Others might not know. He Yunhu and Lin Feng all had some connections in their families. Furthermore, they had both lived in the same courtyard. It wasn't like they didn't know the connection between them. Fengyi didn't hold back. Some people would reject their previous lives after losing their memories. Actually, I wasn't the first person to realize that young Master Qin had forgotten how to play games. It was Little Spade. She just sent me a message, so you can be prepared when you meet tomorrow. There's nothing to prepare. Lin Feng stood up, his voice unusually serious. Supreme Alliance's captain will only be Qin Mo. Even if he doesn't know how to game anymore, he will still be our god. No one can replace his position. Fengyi smiled. Then prepare for tomorrow's meeting. Tell them that you guys should get together before the competition. What about the matter on the internet? Lin Feng coughed lightly. Fengyi's gaze deepened. I'll handle the public relations and give you a satisfactory answer. From a certain perspective, Fengyi was also very protective. However, everyone was clear about this. After knowing this, no one would feel good in their hearts. Lying on the bed, Lin Feng was still thinking about how Little Spade must have felt when she was the first to find out. Chapter 1299. Was it painful? Bojiu didn't know how it felt. She watched as he took the phone like a new player, not even familiar with the map. Not to mention, he moved slowly and even knocked into the wall. Once upon a time, she had made a vow. She would never let him fall from his pedestal. She could still remember him dressed in white, wielding a long sword. With a wave of his sleeves, he could take away a drop of blood. Even now, there were still videos of his games on the major websites. Be it his movement or his technique, they were all like textbook existences. Only on the map of Hero could he come and go as he pleased, as elegant as the wind. The repeated 3,000 knife cuts and the 5 consecutive kills. It was like a brand. The moment Bojiu closed her eyes, she would remember it. That was why she reacted that way when she saw the assassin mocking the Almighty's movement. Those people would never understand. What kind of existence was he? Bojiu didn't feel terrible, but her heart ached. She just wanted to make her little princess Qin happy. She could do anything. Moreover, it was just catching people in the game. She glanced at the Almighty, interested, and started the second round. Bojiu understood as she played. The Almighty's interest was to create trouble for her. For example, when she was killing the blue beast, he would point his finger over and control the character to retreat. Her previous attacks would be in vain. She wouldn't have enough aggro, and would have to pull the monster again. When she killed someone, the Almighty never stopped her. He would even laugh softly beside her ear. So sinister? It's all thanks to Brother Mo's teachings. Bojiu liked to hide in the bushes. She had learned it from the Almighty. Qin Mo placed his chin on her shoulder, listening to the main point. I taught you the game? Partly. Bojiu's eyes lit up. How about this? I'll tell you how you chased me. Qin Mo arched a brow, his voice lazy. I chased you? Of course, I can't be the one who chased you, I'm a girl. Bojiu didn't look at Qin Mo when she said this. The little gangster had her guilty moments too. Qin Mo chuckled, leaning over and kissing her ears. I'm glad my sugar daddy still remembers she's a girl. Bojiu. Then, how did I chase you? The enthusiasm of a prey couldn't be dispelled, especially when it was kept at home. Qin Mo felt her warmth, his lips curved slightly. Chapter 1300. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first? Qin Mo repeated these words, reaching out lazily to turn off her phone. It sounds like you're the only one who thinks it. Bojiu glanced over. All right, regardless of whether you have such intentions, I do. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first. Is that the reason you joined the team? Qin Mo asked nonchalantly. Bojiu replied seriously. I was bewitched by Brother Mo's beauty and couldn't help myself. I even signed a contract to sell myself for 3 years. Brother Mo is the legal representative of the team. That means I'm the sugar daddy. Qin Mo chuckled, the corners of his lips lifting as he watched the person in his arms. Bojo finally understood what it meant to say too much was bound to slip up. She started to change the topic. That's not it. I'm definitely richer than you. I entered the team to sleep with you. Oh, was it an employee sleeping with the boss? Or was it a member sleeping with the captain? Chinemo asked with a smile on his face. Bojo knew she wouldn't be able to get anything out of this conversation. Hence, she reached for her phone and prepared to play another round. The man was looking at her from behind, but his posture didn't change. He was still holding her in his arms. Why aren't you killing beasts? It hasn't refreshed yet. It's been less than 10 seconds. I forgot. It refreshed 120 seconds after the kill. It's out now. Bojo paused, glancing up. How did you know? Did he remember? Or did he remember? Is it difficult? Chinemo tapped the screen. After watching you play so many rounds, it's easy to come up with a conclusion. Bojo had forgotten that even though the Almighty had lost his memory, he was still a genius, especially as a psychologist. No one could compare to him in terms of memory. How long can my blue energy last? 90. How long will the Tyrant King fall into darkness? 10 minutes after the start of the game. Bojo's eyes lit up. How long will my big move take to recover? Are you testing me? Or do you want me to get familiar with the game? Chinemo looked at the person in his arms and smiled, but the warmth in his eyes dimmed. I'm not someone who likes to play games. I like to play games in the past, but that doesn't mean I like it now. Bojo glanced up, noticing his slight impatience. She switched off her phone. I won't play if you don't like it. I thought you liked it since you were so excited about messing with me. That's because you're playing, Chinemo said suddenly. Both of them were stunned. Chinemo frowned. Bojo couldn't stop herself from laughing. Chinemo leaned forward. Very proud? That's right. Bojo's eyes lit up. Brother Emo. Does this mean that you like me a little? Chinmo's voice was calm and he laughed. You are my sugar daddy. How can I not like you? He was pretending to be gentle again. What else could Bojo say? As long as you like it. On the other hand, Chinmo's eyes deepened as though he was still wondering why he had blurted out such a sentence. However, there was nothing wrong with playing with domesticated prey. She was likable after all. But there was one thing. She didn't know if it was because he didn't allow her to play games. She followed him wherever he went, even when he went to the bathroom, like a little tail. Chapter 1301. Nothing much. I just wanted to ask where my reward is. Bojo hadn't forgotten what the Almighty had said. As long as she destroyed the sorcerer, there would be a reward. Chinemo arched a brow in amusement. She had followed him all the way just for a reward? Wasn't she childish? Bojo pouted when he didn't reply. Are you trying to fool me? Close your eyes. Chinemo reached out and tapped on her frown. Was she throwing a tantrum? Bojo broke into a smile and closed her eyes obediently. It wasn't easy to get a kiss these days. To match the Almighty's height, she even tiptoed. Chinemo watched her actions and couldn't help but smile. He placed the things in his hands into her pants pocket and said nonchalantly, It's done. Done. Bojo opened her eyes. He hadn't even touched her. How was it done? Aren't you going to kiss me? Bojo asked, disappointment evident on her face. Chinemo asked, What's going on in your head? Didn't I say it before? Bojo replied innocently. Chinemo was reminded of the answer she had given him. 2 words, sleep with him. Was he that easy to sleep with? Chinemo didn't look at her face and pretended to take the thing back. Since that's the case, you probably don't want the reward I gave you. Who said I don't want it? Brother Emo. How can I take back the reward I gave you? Bojo blocked him with one hand and pressed her other hand into her pocket. That was when she realized what it was. It was a round piece wrapped in a beautiful packaging. A chocolate-flavored milk candy? Bojo paused. She was suddenly reminded of how he had been like this in the military. Regardless of the time, he would always have a piece of candy in his pocket. It was because she liked to eat it. Chinemo frowned when he saw the person in front of him not moving. What did she mean? She didn't like it. That shouldn't be possible. From his observation, This girl really liked to eat sweets, and among all the sweets, this was her favorite flavor. But why was she looking like that? Chin Emo stuffed one hand into his pocket when he didn't see the smile, or the hug he had expected. His mood didn't change, but he shouldn't have asked that question. Why? You don't like it? When she heard the familiar voice, Bojo snapped out of her reverie. She tightened her grip on the candy, her eyes turning into crescent moons. I like it a lot. Chin Emo glanced at her. You like it very much? However, he didn't seem surprised at all. Instead, he seemed to be reminiscing about something. Chin Emo tilted his head, his stray hair perfectly covering his eyes. As long as you like it. What this person said and what she thought were not the same. But it was normal. Usually, people would miss their lovers when they didn't lose their memories. With this in mind, Chin Emo lifted the corners of his lips slightly. Even though he was smiling, there wasn't any warmth in it. Of course, Bojo wouldn't be able to detect his presence. He would only hold her waist in bed and harshly bully her. Only when she begged for mercy would he kiss the corner of her eyes. He would not go to the last step. Chapter 1302. The sentence had probably left a deep impression on her. The next day, when she woke up, Bojo was still by his side. Brother Emo, did you talk to me yesterday? Bojo followed him and asked, Brother Emo, did you talk to me yesterday? Talk. Chin Emo stood by the side of the bed, buttoning his shirt casually. When he heard her words, his well-defined fingers paused in the halo. They were so white that they were almost transparent. What did you say? Bojo watched the lazy expression on his face and frowned when she heard his question. Was she muddle-headed from sleep? You said you're the one beside me now. Chin Emo smiled. Would I say something like that? Indeed, it doesn't seem like something you would say. Other than his poisonous tongue, the Almighty didn't have any sweet nothings. Bojo stood up, stepping onto the floor barefooted. Perhaps she really was muddle-headed from sleep. Unexpectedly, the moment her feet touched the ground, he grabbed the back of her collar and threw her back onto the bed. Put on your shoes. Just like when they were young, he would always stare at her. Bojo glanced at his face. She bent down and pulled the slippers up. That should be enough. Chin Emo couldn't be bothered with him, heading into the bathroom to wash up. Who knew that the little hooligan would follow behind? When he was squeezing the toothpaste, he didn't even know to roll up his sleeves, wasting his smart face. Bojo noticed the Almighty's gaze and replied calmly, Brother Emo, the team will be here today, they are all your brothers. Chin Emo squeezed the toothpaste lazily, replying softly, MMH. Let's have a gathering then, Bojo said, reaching for the basin. But Chin Emo was one step ahead, grabbing her hand. His toothbrush was still in his mouth, his expression indifferent. He tilted his head slightly, his fingers rolling up her sleeves. Bojo watched the face under the glow. It was handsome and familiar, perhaps there wasn't any difference. If you look at me again and recall the past, I'm going to get angry. Bojo couldn't tell if he was joking or sincere. All she knew was that he reached out, pressing the back of her neck towards him. His voice slow. Don't you know to roll up your sleeves when washing your face? How old are you? Bojo's ability to take care of herself wasn't very good. Now that her face had been washed, she couldn't help smiling. The Almighty's tone was filled with disappointment. He was just short of adding little Bojo's name in front. Bojo smiled and drank a glass of milk. The Almighty had also poured the milk for her. He had even tested the temperature with his hand, before giving it to her. It was becoming more and more like what he had done when he was young. Bojo was delighted. Her good mood lasted until she sent a message to Lin Feng. The naive Lin Feng was still nervous. Do you think we should bring something over? Bojo didn't like typing, so she decided to send a voice message. We don't lack anything at home. Grandfather Butler made a whole roasted lamb. We can sit around the table and talk while we eat. You guys can train here after you're done eating. There are 13 high-end aliens. It's enough for you guys to play together. After hearing this, Lin Feng turned his head away, his expression a little dazed. Yinhu glanced at him. Why? Is it inconvenient for little Spade? Very convenient. Lin Feng stood up. You can go there directly to train, but who would make a whole lamb handcuffed at home? Chapter 1303. When Lin Feng saw the grandfather butler that Bojiu mentioned, he realized that there was really someone who could handcuff a whole lamb at home. At first, when they rang the doorbell, they paused for a moment when they saw the person. Especially Rao Rong, who was standing at the front. Initially, he had a cool posture, but after coming into contact with the old man's face, he paused, apologizing to him in English. Then he turned around and asked Lin Feng, "Are you sure you didn't find the wrong door?" 109. This is the room. Lin Feng was also puzzled. Why was it a handsome British grandfather who opened the door? Should he send another voice message to ask Little Spade? Just as he was about to pick up his phone, an old man dressed in a well-ironed suit opened his mouth. He was well-mannered like an aristocrat. "Young master is still adjusting the network. Please come in." Rao Rong rubbed his nose in fluent Chinese. Lin Feng's eyes widened even more. Young master? Which era did this term come from? But if it was the network, it had to be Little Spade. All of them looked as if they were sleepwalking. Even Uncle Ian put the cigarette he was about to put in his mouth into his hand. This situation was a little unexpected. Especially the Englishman who was wearing a black apron. His voice was very pleasant. "Today, I have prepared a whole roasted lamb for everyone. Young master said that all of you like meat." Yes, they loved meat. But there was such a huge iron shelf in front of him. And behind him stood a British butler holding a professional knife and fork. This made them a little confused. The room was full of fragrance. Lin Feng could even see the whole goat in the center being shackled to a golden color. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The oil was still dripping into the fire. It couldn't be any more fragrant. As for the old man, it was obvious that he was a professional chef. He picked up the machete and cut the sheep a few times. He was skilled and gentlemanly, as if he was performing. Coco touched his chin. "This technique, huh?" Shui Yaoyao leaned over, wanting to ask what was wrong. Coco bit the rabbit in his arms. "It's so cool. I saw something similar when I was attending the Dubai Prince's conference with my dad. That's why our meal was at the level of a prince." Lin Feng was in a trance. Coco stopped talking. He was smelling the meat. It smelled so good. Roasted whole lamb was different from normal barbecue. The smell of fruit would mix with cumin powder burst forth with a fragrance that could instantly make one's stomach growl. Very few people in the family would do that. Unless he went to the Mongolian steppe. Rao Rong wasn't as surprised as before. After all, he had interacted with that person previously. If the other party was only the young master of the Fu family, it would be impossible for him to do this. But that was Z, a world-class hacker. During his time in the dark, he had heard many things about that person. He came from a family of hackers. Its origin was unfathomable. Some people said that Z had the aristocratic bloodline of a 19th century Oriental and Westerner. However, this had never been confirmed. After all, they did not know whether the person was a man or a woman. If he hadn't interacted with Little Spade, he wouldn't have realized she was Z. Now it seemed that he was really too rich. However, he had never understood. Why was Z always in the Fifth Avenue according to the information they had found? But Little Spade was in Jiang City. None of that mattered now. Chapter 1304. Bojiu was adjusting the network when she heard the commotion downstairs. She grabbed Qinmo's hand and walked down the stairs. Probably because her hair had been pressed down when she slept last night, a strand of her silver hair was sticking up. Because she was adjusting the network cable, there was a layer of dust on the tip of her nose. She looked rather handsome. The moment she came down, Lin Feng shouted. Lin Feng let out a cry and opened his arms, wanting to hug her. But before his hand could reach her shoulder, Bojiu stopped him. Swoosh! A poker card flew over and stabbed him in the shoe. He stomped his feet in pain. F***ck, where did this poker card come from? Why did it stab me so? Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, he was rooted to the ground by Qinmo's gaze. That gaze was deep and unfathomable. It was casual and without a hint of warmth. Lin Feng stilled, calling out in a probing manner, "Captain." Qin Emo smiled. "Sorry, my hand slipped just now." "Oh." Lin Feng was suddenly at a loss for words. His captain's politeness was so strange. In the past, when he had been disciplining them, he had never apologized to them. It was normal for him to punish them by not allowing them to eat meat. Those who were familiar with him knew that he would only be so polite to outsiders. Were they outsiders now? Just thinking about this made Lin Feng feel a little uncomfortable. However, it was only for a short while. Nothing was more important than his captain's safe return. The naive Lin Feng believed Qin Mo's words cheerfully. He reached over to place his hand on Bojio's shoulder. "Little spade, I brought a dozen beers, isn't it nice?" Swoosh. This time, the poker card flew over his head, accurately cutting off his hair. Lin Feng stilled, looking at his captain with a bitter expression. "Did your hand slip again?" "Of course." Qin Mo smiled faintly. "I wanted to stab your hand." Lin Feng turned his head, wanting to complain to his teammates. He hadn't expected Yun Hu to be the only humane one who knew to pull him behind his back. The others only used their gazes to tell him that he deserved it. F***ck. What kind of people were they? Little Spade was even worse. She said with a serious face, "Team Flower Lin, I've wanted to tell you for a long time. I have a family now. Don't touch me all the time. My boyfriend won't be happy. Don't touch me so casually in the future." Lin Feng. "You called me brother. When we were drinking erguotu, you put your arm around my shoulder and said that I was a submissive with no threat. I didn't expect you to be such a little spade." With this commotion, the group of people seemed to be the same as before. Uncle Ian was chuckling with a cigarette in his mouth. Coco and Feng Shang were whispering into each other's ears, while Rao Rong and Lin Chintao were adding the finishing touches. They didn't seem uncomfortable at all. Bojio displayed her love with a handsome face, her methods a little shameless. Qin Mo sat beside her lazily, his arm resting on the back of the chair. Even though there wasn't any intimacy, one could feel that the two of them were one. Even now, there was a lot of flirtatious talk in the Eastport circle. Everyone was talking while eating and drinking, and the whole place was filled with laughter. Shui Yaoyao looked at this group of people, her heart heating up. She really felt good, even though she was covered in scars. Chapter 1305. As a qualified butler, of course, the old man sensed the change in Shui Yaoyao's mood. He very considerately passed the napkin over and pushed the dessert forward. He said in a low voice, "This is young master's favorite. Paired with lemon tea, it will improve a lady's mood." Shui Yaoyao's eyes widened in shock at his action. She lifted her head and met the youngster's gentle gaze. Now she finally understood why Her Highness Jiao was so warm. With the old man around, the upbringing was imperceptible. In reality, Shui Yaoyao's thoughts were both right and wrong. If Grandpa Butler knew about this, he would definitely sigh and say with pride and helplessness, "My young master's gentlemanly demeanor is much stronger than the men outside, but I'm clearly teaching her lessons on being a lady." No matter how she looked at it, it was a case of bad upbringing. But in Grandfather Butler's heart, his young lord had always been a rare treasure. That was why he had prepared everything. Lin Feng couldn't help glancing over when he was wiping the cutlery with a white cloth. His posture was so elegant. Where exactly did Little Spade poach him from? He was amazing. Lin Feng couldn't hide his words. He would always ask questions directly. Bojio chuckled. "Grandfather Butler was around when I was young, but I don't have the ability to poach him over." Qin Mo nodded. "Who else could it be?" Lin Feng was confused. "It couldn't be the Fu family, right?" "Oh right." Bojio placed the cup in her hand down, changing the topic naturally. "Brother Mo's hand is healed. Grandfather Butler performed the surgery, and it's very flexible now. It doesn't hurt when he twists his wrist. You don't have to worry anymore." She hadn't told anyone about this news. Now it was released. Everyone at the table was stunned for a moment, and then they unconsciously laughed. They were probably too happy. Bojio knew what they were thinking. For the past 3 years he had been competing with an injured hand. For the sake of Supreme Alliance, he had given up his best position as a jungler, and couldn't invade the enemy's jungle as he pleased. It was probably because he was worried that his injury would relapse at a crucial moment, and he would lose the competition. He knew Supreme Alliance couldn't leave him, hence, even when the doctor told him to rest for 2 years, he didn't listen. Because everyone knew what 2 years meant in the esports circle. In 2 years, those who said they liked you would fall in love with other teams. In 2 years, an esports player's golden period might be over. 2 years, Supreme Alliance couldn't wait that long. Hence, be it Lin Feng Yunhu, or even Feng Yi, they all felt guilty. Countless times, they would think that it would have been great if they could have persevered until that person came back. After realizing that dream, they could have retired. That person would be able to recuperate in peace instead of wasting all of his talent and pride bit by bit like this. Indeed, many people would not understand. How did Feng Yi feel when he saw Spadesy maneuvering the game character and gliding through the wilderness like the wind? It wasn't just the light of Supreme Alliance. At that time, he thought finally such a shadow has finally appeared. I can make that person come back. Chapter 1306. Yin, who could tell what was hidden in Lin Feng's eyes. That naive guy's first reaction was to send a message to Feng Yi, who was still in the company. Fox Feng. Do you know that Captain's hand has recovered? Ha ha ha, Captain's hand has recovered. If Zhao Sampang and the others dare to be arrogant in the group again, I'll close the door and release Captain. The Almighties all had their own almighty groups, especially those that were at their level. Yin, who wondered if this person had forgotten that Captain had lost his memory and couldn't play at all. But he didn't stop him, watching as he chatted with Feng Yi, adding, I feel like he can still play for another 10 years. When they gathered together, there seemed to be a kind of strength. They could still be like this, 10 years younger. When Feng Yi saw the WeChat message, he was still dealing with matters online. He hadn't slept for a day and had to drink with the media. His suit jacket hung on his arm, the fatigue of the business world. The little assistant beside him said, Boss Feng, why don't you sleep for a while? We'll keep an eye on them. He held onto his phone and suddenly broke into a smile. She didn't know what he saw. He placed his hand on his neck and pressed it, returning to his smiling fox self. I'll keep an eye on them. Go get some coffee and reward everyone for their hard work before the Asian Cup. The little assistant wanted to say that it wasn't hard, but she sneaked a glance at him. In the past, she didn't understand the concept of an esports company. She thought it was just a simple game where the players just had to compete properly. Now that she was here, she understood. A good team. They didn't just need players to rush forward. They also needed someone to support them from the back. He had to think of everything and take precautions. If he couldn't think of anything, he had to deal with it immediately. Because this was related to the internet, the information spread quickly. It was fine if there was a small conflict. But what he was most afraid of was people distorting the truth. For example, now, the person who claimed to be a fan of the team was obstructing the team with every sentence. It was obvious that she didn't want Spadesy to return. Once the public relations department was in charge, she would say that she was disappointed in the team, that her feelings were wasted and that they were all fed to the dogs. If you responded to these things, it would be the team being unreasonable. Feng Yi usually saw such things. He would sit in front of the computer and smoke occasionally. He would control it for a while before returning to the matter at hand. This was the only way Spadesy could come back. Probably because of the good news, the atmosphere at the dining table was good until Rao Rong stood up, looking towards Qin Mo. Since your hand is healed, let's have a match. We can see how well we can cooperate. Lin Feng's hand froze. There was no reply from Coco either. At that moment, the room was extremely quiet. Qin Mo was the only one who was still holding on to a knife and fork. He cut a piece of lamb with a perfect posture and placed it between his lips. After he finished eating, he curved his lips slightly. I'm not interested in games. All of a sudden, the atmosphere around them changed, and it became slightly cold. Lin Feng immediately turned to look at Rao Rong, as though to say, We've already made a deal. Why did you change your mind at the last minute? Chapter 1307. Rao Rong knew that he was the only one who would say such words to Qin Mo. Everyone in Supreme Alliance had been groomed by him, so of course he wouldn't say it. The only one who wasn't afraid of Qin Mo would spoil him to the core. How was he going to change the situation if he didn't interact with him? Besides, it was Qin Mo. He couldn't just say that he wasn't interested. It wasn't just the same team. Even his former opponent was waiting for him to display his true abilities in the Asian Cup. If he needed a bad guy, he would be the one. How about it? Rao Rong laughed lightly, continuing. Do you want to play? Or do you think you're not good enough that you don't even dare to play with me? As his words fell, the surrounding atmosphere completely dropped to a freezing point. Qin Mo placed his cutlery down, meeting his gaze, his voice calm. I seem to be looked down upon. How am I going to play? That's right. Qin Mo didn't even know what it meant to play. Me, you, Lin Feng, Yin Hu, and Uncle Yin, the 5 of us will play together and see what results we can achieve. Rao Rong glanced at the youngster. Z doesn't have to participate. Once she enters the game, I'm afraid she will either win or stay by your side to protect you. She won't be able to gauge your current standard. All right. One word. Qin Mo grabbed his jacket and stood up. There was a smile on his lips, but his emotions didn't fluctuate. It was hard to tell if he was happy or angry. There was a huge room upstairs filled with computers, perfect for playing. But Bojo didn't move. Qin Mo glanced at her. What is it? Are you afraid my fragile heart can't take it? No. Bojo stood up. I was wondering if I could sit beside you when you play. You probably aren't familiar with the character's abilities. When Qin Mo heard this, his eyes finally warmed up a little. This fellow still had a conscience. Wasn't today's show just to get him to play? Qin Mo lowered his head, smirking. When he glanced up, he smiled faintly. You're my sugar daddy. Where do you want to sit if not beside me? My legs? There's no need for your legs, it might affect your game, she replied seriously. Lin Feng was about to vomit blood when he heard this. You're just going to sit if it doesn't affect your game? Also, what was the term sugar daddy? Little Spade. Do you still want Captain to call you daddy? What did you say to Captain when he lost his memory? Lin Feng wanted to have a good talk with Little Spade, but his captain was guarding against him like a wolf. It really hurt his heart. However, it wasn't easy for them to sit together and play together again. Everyone was a little excited. Yao Yao, Lin Chentao, and the others also turned on their computers. Rao Rong sat there, placing the earpiece on his head. I'm the mid lane. Top lane. Uncle Ian still had a cigarette in his mouth. Lin Feng chose a healer support. I'll use this to practice. I'll play the ad carry. Yin Hu tilted his head, scanning the situation online. They all use large sizes. The impact of using a main account was that once you went online, you would immediately be targeted by a large number of fans. Usually, just one person alone could cause a shockwave. Now that the 4 of them had come online at the same time, it was like a bomb had been thrown into the air, blowing up the entire game's fairness. Chapter 1308. When Qin Mo's game ID appeared in everyone's line of sight, the entire internet seemed to have paused for 0.1 seconds. Then, it really exploded. The public chat exploded with messages. Awe. Screams filled the entire game. My almighty Qin. What did I see? My almighty Qin. I can't take it anymore. Calm down, let me take another look. Oh my god, it's really my almighty Qin. I jumped off the bed excitedly and ran 3 rounds downstairs. There's a surprise online today. What? Almighty Qin is back. Where? Click on the Almighty's view. The first room shows Almighty Qin and his team. F***CK Black 5. I can't believe I'll be able to see this in my lifetime. Don't stop me, I want to see my husband. The game hadn't started and Qin Mo was still choosing his character. It wasn't just here, even the official Weibo was bombarded. No matter what Black 5 said, he was disappointed. But there was one thing, the popularity of the official Weibo didn't decrease at all. Every esports team knew what the name Qin Mo represented. It was the time when they didn't know his background and wanted to poach him over, but he refused to leave, choosing the small manager, Feng Yi. All the businessmen knew that it was a hot topic, traffic, popularity, and godly operating skills that no one could surpass. He wasn't a celebrity, but he was more popular than a celebrity. Many people couldn't catch up to him. The popularity continued to rise. It was the same for the number of spectators. Why hasn't Almighty Qin chosen his character? The jungler's position is empty. Almighty Qin will definitely do it. I have a feeling that I'll be crying because of my husband's cool maneuvering. But this time, Qin Mo took way too long to choose his character. Lin Feng tilted his head and glanced over. His captain held the mouse in one hand and asked the youngster beside him casually, "Which character did you choose previously? Do you want to use the one I used?" Bojo chuckled. She turned her body and held onto the mouse through his hand. Her breath was seductive. This is the most handsome assassin and hero. He's dressed in white and has a long sword in his hand. His movements are graceful, and when he's powerful, he can turn the whole place upside down. Many girls like him, and they call him hubby or little brother in private. You like it too? Qin Mo clicked confirm while asking a certain someone absent-mindedly, "What's there to like about a fake character?" Bojo held her cheeks and smiled devilishly. "I like it. Really." Qin Mo had the urge to change this character and choose a new one. His thin lips were a little cold. He didn't look handsome at all. He was just a pretty boy with a wine flask hanging on his waist. He looked sloppy. Previously, he had thought that although the prey he had his eyes on didn't have any obvious advantages, he had a good eye. Now it seemed that his foresight wasn't that great. Unexpectedly, before he could finish his thoughts, the youngster's voice came from the other side. The youngster's voice came from the other side of the phone again. Her breath was very close to him, as if she was speaking beside his ear. It was hot and ticklish. "Brother Mo, you're the best at playing him. Honestly, in the entire game, he's the only one who looks especially handsome when you're playing him." Chapter 1309. Bojo ignored Lin Feng's resentful gaze and focused on the screen. The game had begun. 5 seconds later, everyone walked out of the spring, including Qin Mo. Since they were all using their main accounts in the arena, according to the rules of the game, the opponents were all high-leveled players. This meant that even though they weren't professional players, their maneuvers were at the standard of an almighty. Being able to reach the same level as Lin Feng and the others meant that they were really good. However, the opponents hadn't expected to be matched with the professional Black Five. At the start, they hadn't noticed the nicknames. After all, there was only one principle when they played. Regardless of who they were facing, the most important thing was to raise their stars. Hence, when they entered the game and saw the number of spectators, they paused. F***ck, it can't be. Quan, did you start a live stream? No, I didn't invite you guys to live stream. Then why? Maybe it's because of the opponents. Opponents? Look at their ID. Supreme Alliance's group? I'm going crazy. What are you going crazy for? Didn't you see the comments online? Qin Mo probably won't be able to participate in the Asian Cup with that hand of his. He probably isn't in a good condition. That's why he hasn't appeared for such a long time. He's such a good team, but he didn't follow the wishes of his fans. Quan, from your tone you don't like them? I used to be a fan, but now, I'm not interested. I do like Supreme Alliance. Don't use such a tone. What's wrong with my tone? Supreme Alliance should learn from me. Listen to the words of the fans. What's wrong with creating a group? Look at how many I have. That's enough, the game has begun. Think about how to play. While they were chatting, everyone went to their respective positions. Quan was also a jungler, using the same character as Qin Mo. He had liked him from the start, but after he started a livestream, he had gained fans. He had wanted to gain some popularity, but Supreme Alliance didn't give him any benefits. The more he looked at him, the more he disliked him. He wasn't the only jungler in the world. There should be more people who knew how to play this character. He had only entered the industry a few years earlier, and was hyped up by his fans to be a god. If he was given the same opportunity, he wouldn't be bad either. As Quan thought about it, he began to plan something. Didn't they say that he was in a bad state? Then he would make use of this opportunity to test him. If he was really weak, he would only catch him. In reality, Quan was still afraid of Qin Mo's name. It could be said that all his jungling techniques were learned from Qin Mo's videos. But he believed in the principle of the student surpassing the master. As long as they planned it well, coupled with that person's condition, they would be able to make a name for themselves. The more Quan thought about it, the more he felt that it was a good idea. For the sake of future publicity, he even pressed the record button on the top right corner. Their chances of winning this match were not very certain. The few of them couldn't defeat Supreme Alliance. However, it was not impossible to capture only one person. At that time, no matter what the result of the competition was, as long as he released the title of Exploding Almighty Qin, his popularity would naturally follow suit. If the fans were not satisfied, he would apologize again. Chapter 13:10. Someone once said that there were two things in this world that shouldn't be looked at directly: the sun and the human heart. The actions of a black-hearted person were basically the same. In order to gain attention, Quan wasn't aware of how vicious his plan was. The more he thought about it, the more feasible it seemed. His long sword struck the blue buff over and over again, ready to harvest it. But he realized that the buff had been snatched a second earlier. Snatched. Quan's fingers stilled, his entire being riled up. F***ck. His teammates hadn't been aware of the situation. But when they glanced up and saw the white figure, they understood. The buff had been snatched by Almighty Qin. Ha ha ha, my heart aches for the assassin. After fighting for so long, my Almighty Qin took everything away with a single strike. Your wilderness is my home. I'm not saying this for nothing. Stealing the blue buff right off the bat, it's indeed Almighty Qin's style. The public chat was full of praise. It was a slap to Quan's face. He had wanted to crush Qin Mo, but the moment he entered the arena, he was going to be crushed. Lin Feng was puzzled. Didn't Captain lose his memory and was unable to play? How did he manage to steal the blue buff? In a high-level match, everyone knew that it wasn't easy to steal mana, unless you could accurately calculate the HP of the blue buff. After all, the opponent wasn't an idiot. It would be too easy to steal mana just because you said so. What happened? Lin Feng asked Bojio. Little Spade, are you lying to us? Actually, Captain is still good at playing, he just doesn't flaunt it. He used to be like that too. Bojio remained silent. Yin Hu spoke up. Lin Feng, Almighty Lin, please look at this weak ADC. You're a support. Why are you looking at the assassin instead of me? The moment Yin Hu finished his sentence, he blocked the opponent's top laner between the walls. With a ferocious attack, the opponent fled back to the tower. The spectators were from Supreme Alliance's side, hence they could hear their conversation. Lin Feng's lips twitched. How are you weak? If you're more serious, you can even kill the top laner. That's right, that's right. Almighty Yun, you're so weak that the opponent's top laner is starting to doubt his life. The fans immediately followed suit. What do you guys know? God Yun is acting like a spoiled child. How can an ad carry leave his support? So gay. Sigh, even a straight man like me is about to become gay. Shui Yaoyao looked at the words on the public screen and wanted to laugh. These fans were too cute. There was probably only one person who couldn't laugh. It was Coco. He knew his captain's maneuvers the best. That person used to sit casually in front of the computer, smoking while controlling the character to move forward nimbly. Wherever he went, not even a blade of grass would grow. After killing the wild, he still had the time to stretch out his hand to press down on his own neck. His positioning was so awesome that it was dazzling. But now, although he successfully stole the opponent's wild monster, he also plundered a lot of money. However, whether it was in terms of positioning or maneuvering, they were all too slow. It wasn't like him. The others in the team didn't notice because they were also playing the game. As a spectator, all of his attention was locked on his captain. The more he watched, the tighter he bit the rabbit ears in his arms. His heart trembled slightly. Even the air he exhaled was cold. Little Spade wasn't lying. Chapter 13:11. Coco tilted his head, glancing towards her. Little Spade must have noticed the problem. But why wasn't there any emotion on her face? She just sat there, a smile hanging on her lips as she watched her captain maneuver his character. Occasionally, she would overhear their conversation. What's his big move? He can seduce people, he's a tank. Does he have high HP? MMH. If we don't kill him, we still have to find a pushover. The last sentence was from their captain, his voice calm, as though he was teaching on the spot. Little Spade held her chin, her words unscrupulous. MMH, we'll find a pushover. Coco. These two are really. Coco didn't manage to express his sorrow. It was washed away by the shameless display of affection. On the other hand, Rao Rong, who was in the middle lane, paused. He switched to the small map and zoomed in, taking in the entire wilderness. Because he had to face an enemy, he didn't take a closer look at Qin Mo's movements. But one thing was obvious. Qin Mo's farming speed, it was so slow that Rao Rong's fingers paused. Any assassin in their profession would have cleared all the beasts in their own wilderness by now. Not to mention Qin Mo, who was faster than everyone else in terms of farming speed. It wasn't just because of his positioning, but also because he was clear about the intervals between the appearance of the beasts and the recovery time of his skills. In the entire circle, he was the only one who could use them flexibly. The title of MVP wasn't just for show. When he was farming, he could use his skills to walk. Anyone who played this game knew that money determined equipment, and equipment determined your damage. The person who could farm the money the fastest would have the highest damage. That way, they would be able to finish off their opponent with one set of skills. Hence, time was extremely important in this game. Right now, even though Qin Mo's farming speed was faster than the average player, at his current level, he wasn't even a tenth of his usual skills. His positioning was erratic. Perhaps his instincts wouldn't allow him to degenerate into a noob who couldn't even use the mouse, but it was obvious that he had forgotten the consciousness of a jungler. What should an assassin do at this moment? He didn't know. Consciousness was a mysterious thing. Everyone's jungling style was different. Little Spade was also a jungler. Both of them were very skilled, leaving nothing behind wherever they went. But the feeling they gave off was different. There was a saying that an assassin did not fight to see who was more reckless, but to see who was more conscious. If one's awareness was good, even if the overall situation was against them, one could rely on commanding the battle and the assassin to lead the tempo to victory. If one's awareness wasn't good, not only would he fail to kill his opponent, he would also be suppressed and beaten, especially in a high-end game like this. The moment Rao Rong had this thought, a figure appeared at the river in the jungle. It was the enemy's assassin. His fingers paused. He had wanted to immediately go over to help. A good mid laner would be able to coordinate with the mid laner, not to mention Rao Rong, who had the nickname of Team Control. However, he seemed to have thought of something. He didn't move. Instead, he stood there and looked in the direction of the person in white. A faint light flashed in his eyes. Qin Mo, let me see if you still know what you have to do as an assassin in the wilderness. Chapter 13:12. For an assassin, the most important thing was to avoid danger, stand at the starting point, and counterattack. That was once your forte. How much do you remember now? Rao Rong glanced up, his eyes glistening. It was time to stop running. On the other side, Qin Mo was still fighting the wild beasts. All of a sudden, his fingers paused. He seemed to have an innate sensitivity towards danger. He controlled his character and moved towards the bushes below. On the other side of the screen, Quan sneered. Trying to escape? With that, he pressed the button to attack, using a skill to invade. She wanted to hit Qin Mo directly. When the people saw the recording, they would be able to tell whose technique was better. Unexpectedly, that person's body moved to the side, and he actually managed to evade his sword. Quan's face heated up, as though he had been punched. But it didn't matter, he wasn't the only one here. Quan turned on the voice message. Kill him. Swoosh. Another person's figure appeared as well. Unexpectedly, after Qin Mo blocked Rao Rong's attack, he shifted, his long sword by his side, temporarily leaving the enemy's line of sight. Even the second person that charged over wasn't able to catch him. But this time it wasn't to snatch the beasts. He was killing. Because the third person had appeared. The control sorcerer. With a turn of his body, he stunned the hero that Qin Mo was controlling. This was the first time Qin Mo saw this character, hence he wasn't sure of its attributes. He had assumed he could use the skill to shift back, but the opponent's control was marked, leaving him no room to dodge. Quan saw that Qin Mo was frozen, his smile widening. He repeated, "Kill him." The tank followed up with a beheading skill. In an instant, Qin Mo's HP was low. He tilted, about to enter the defense tower. Quan chased after him, using a big move to take him away. But at that moment, Qin Mo turned around and raised his long sword. With 3 swishing sounds, the silver light fell. Hound, who was at full health, lost half of it. Quan retracted his hand in shock. Qin Mo hadn't escaped. But he wouldn't be able to live either. That person had set up an electric formation for him before he died. Quan shrieked in fear. "Save me." The support at the side quickly cast a heal, taking advantage of his last breath to heal him. That was how he managed to escape death. There weren't 3 of them, there were 4. 4 of them to capture a jungler? Did they not care about anything else? What kind of strategy was this? Soon Quan gave his answer. Afraid that no one could hear him, he typed a string of words on the public chat. "Almighty Qin? Almighty Qin, if you're old, you should retire early. Don't always use your hand injury as an excuse. If you can't even beat me, why are you participating in the Asian Cup? If I were you, I would give the newbies a chance so that they won't be able to perform well and affect their reputation. You might even drag the Supreme Alliance down with you. Let me make this clear, I don't mean to insult you. Your fans are too scary, so don't come and tear me apart, hee. This was undoubtedly a challenge. Important. Everyone who saw this understood why the other side had sent 4 people to catch a jungler. Chapter 13:13. Who is he? How shameless. What do you mean Almighty Qin can't even beat him? There were 4 of them trying to capture one person. I just want to ask that Quan guy. Did you just get healed by your team's support? Let's see if you'll die without him. F***ck, my temper is so bad. I can't take it anymore. How could someone say such a thing? There's no need to continue watching, the game is about to end. Supreme Alliance is going to win. Indeed, it was about to end. The other side didn't care about anything. Before Lin Feng and Yin Hu knew what was happening, they had already attacked the other side's base. The next moment, they saw the words on the public screen. Lin Feng clicked on the mouse, preparing to run back. But before he could reach, Rao Rong turned. Using his passive skill and displacement, he reaped the harvest in an instant, leaving behind the sound of 4 consecutive kills. Lin Feng and the others didn't even need to attack the enemy's base. It was already occupied by the troops. Quan glanced at the words on the public screen, tapping the keyboard. Why are you still arguing? Didn't we agree to not argue? Qin fans are said to have high standards, but why can't I tell? Even though we lost, we were able to torture our Almighty Qin. That's good enough. F***ckU. Lin Feng really didn't care about anything else and directly cursed in the game. In that instant, Rao Rong regretted it. He hadn't expected such a person. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. But it was already done. Bojiu knew Rao Rong's method wasn't wrong. The Almighty's maneuvers were much better than when he had watched her play yesterday. But there wasn't enough time. He hadn't even understood some of the opponent's skills. There were 4 of them, and every move was targeted at him. If it was the old him, Bojiu shifted her gaze, landing on his handsome side profile. This was the first time she felt her throat tighten. It was so tight that it felt as though something was about to spill out. The atmosphere in the computer room was at its lowest point. Qin Mo waved his hand, seemingly emotionless. He glanced down at the mouse he had been holding before glancing up at the character lying in the game. There was a moment of pause. The indignation in his heart was too familiar. It was so familiar, as though he had experienced it before. Lin Feng couldn't suppress his anger at all. Everyone knew that this wasn't the time to curse. Once a public figure cursed, there would be a lot of negative news. even if you didn't do anything wrong. Some passers-by would also wonder why he had such an image. Not to mention those who didn't like him in the first place. They would seize this opportunity to add fuel to the fire. Quan was such a person. The moment he heard Lin Feng curse, he exclaimed, "That's scary. Why are the Almighties of Supreme Alliance cursing?" Enough. It was his teammates who stopped him. After all, it was not right to speak like this. Quan didn't think that he had done anything wrong. After all, he was already dead, and the crystal base was almost gone. He seized the time to say one last sentence. If you don't know how to jungler, then don't. If your hand speed can't keep up, then leave quickly. As soon as he finished speaking, the crystal completely exploded, and the screen was filled with silver flowers that scattered everywhere. They had clearly won, but no one could be happy at this moment. Chapter 13-14. Bojio, who had been silent the entire time, placed the keyboard down, her silver hair swaying slightly as she logged into the game. Her typing speed had always been fast. Before they could exit the game, Bojio had already logged into the game. Shui Yaoyao watched the clean face. Shui Yaoyao looked at that fair face. From the beginning to the end, Highness Jiu didn't seem to say a word. Indeed, she hadn't. Even her eyes were dark and emotionless. But that was it. The audience stilled. They had never seen such a little spade before. They really had never seen such a person. Bojio didn't waste any time, starting the battle and inviting people. She used a small account and had a medium level. Quan wasn't interested, and was about to reject when a message appeared on the screen. A message appeared on the screen. What? Didn't you say that you were good? I'm just a fan of Almighty Qin, and my level isn't high. You don't even dare to accept my challenge? In order to attract more fans, Quan had already started the live stream. This meant that everyone could see it. Quan glanced at the opponent's level. He was 2 levels lower than him, and wouldn't have a problem fighting him. He had an entire set of critical hit stats. Besides, he had always been confident in his maneuvering, otherwise he wouldn't have become a streamer. Since he was here to embarrass himself, he would continue. It was a good chance to prove his skills. Quan smiled. Look, all I did was kill Almighty Qin once and his fans couldn't take it anymore. They even said that they had good manners. Forget it, as a small-time streamer, I have no choice but to accept the challenge. With that, he clicked the accept button. After entering, he realized it was a 1v1. But it didn't matter, he would be able to torture him even more. The game started. Everyone in the room could hear the music. Both Lin Feng and Rao Rong knew what Bojio was doing. Yin Wuyao chuckled, a cigarette dangling from his lips as he said, "Little captain, all the best, crush him. F***ck little spade, I'll support you fully this time. I'll give you $100 for each kill." Lin Feng had to get back at him. Yin Hu raised the bid calmly. 100 isn't enough, 1,000. Send the money into the red packet. Bojio tilted her head. Send 10,000. In other words, he had to kill them 10 times. Coco stood up and grabbed the rabbit plush in his hands. Bojio turned. Brother Mo, come over, I have something on. MH. Mo's voice rose as he straightened and walked towards her. What's the matter? Watch me fight. Bojio freed one hand and held on to him. She seemed to be afraid that he wouldn't agree. She smiled and her eyes were filled with emotions. Mo looked at the person in front of him, and then at the hand that was tugging on his sleeve. She was as stubborn as a child. Usually, he was annoyed by this kind of child. But he did not know why. When facing this guy, his heart would always soften. I don't want to fight. If you keep looking at the game and keep looking at me, how are you going to fight? Mo followed the strength of her hand and sat down, his breath hitting her face. His eyes were half black as though he was saying, "This idiot." Once the Almighty sat beside her, she didn't get distracted. This game had to be watched by him, otherwise she wouldn't be able to get over the hurdle in her heart. Chapter 13-15. Quan didn't know that the Qin fan he was about to cripple was actually Spade Z. While doing the live stream, he said, "At this level, I'll just continue to play the game character. I can win anytime I want." Quan's words made many Qin fans feel disgusted, as though they had swallowed a fly. But they couldn't speak. The Asian Cup was about to begin. They couldn't just charge in and tear him apart because that would only increase his popularity. As a fan, what he was most worried about was the person who was about to fight against Hound. They hoped to help Almighty Qin vent his anger and teach him a good lesson. But the difference in their levels was too huge. Would he be alright? Just as the fans were thinking about it, the game had begun. They also noticed that both sides had chosen the same character. Almighty Qin's best hero. Quan sneered. "He's overestimating himself. After I use the blue buff, I'll send him back to the spring." Quan's speed wasn't bad. His moves were copied from Almighty Qin's previous videos. With a skill, he teleported to the jungle, starting from the blue buff. The more the fans watched, the more flustered they became. They had chosen Quan's perspective, and when they saw his maneuvering, their hearts sank. But right at this moment, a white figure darted in like the wind. First, he used a jungling skill to take away the blue buff, followed by a movement, the damage landing on Quan. He used a lightning strike to slow him down, his long sword sweeping across, not intending to leave after stealing the beasts. This person, he isn't just trying to steal the beasts. Steal the beasts? Bojo pressed the tip of her tongue against her chin. A smile on her face, but Coco couldn't sense any warmth from her. Her right hand held onto the mouse, her left hand moving so quickly that it was hard to see. On the screen, the figure in the white robe didn't retreat when he encountered the defense tower. Instead, he chased after Hound, who had low HP, and raised his long sword. He's trying to? A tower kill. Isn't it too early? Is he going to trade a life for a life? Quan hadn't expected this person to be so fierce. He turned around and cast a movement speed debuff on his opponent, intending to use a sliver of his HP to counterattack. However, that person seemed to have predicted his movements in advance. With a nimble curve, he dodged his attack and entered his body like the wind. KO. On blood. Listening to the exciting sound effects, the fans watching the live broadcast all widened their eyes. Quan was so angry that he blurted out, "You can't escape either." One must know that the attack power of the defense tower was also very strong. But who knew? In the next second, the figure flashed out of the tower and returned to the blue buff. Teleport. Damn, he's so handsome. What a coquettish move. Oh my god. My maiden heart is about to explode. A certain host has been slapped in the face this time. I can't help but be impressed by that move. Quan could see the comments. He thought that he would be able to perish together, but he didn't expect such an outcome. If he couldn't even beat Qinmo's fans, how was he going to explain himself? No, he had to think of a way. I was smoking just now. I never expected Almighty Qin's fans to be so good at sneak attacks. I have to fight properly. Quan acted as though nothing had happened, continuing to operate his character. He could see the small map of the game. In his opinion, this fan was too arrogant. He didn't leave after killing him, and was still clearing the beasts in his jungle. He hadn't put up any defenses, which was why he had succeeded. This time, he only had half his HP left. He must have absorbed all his HP from the beasts, damn it. But it didn't matter. Soon, he would make him regret his actions. Quan raised his sword and headed for the figure. The fans couldn't help but shout, "Danger!" The figure, who was still killing the beasts, didn't seem to notice them as he continued to slash the beasts with his sword. Once, twice, thrice. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. They couldn't even bear to see the figure being killed. But in the next second, the entire livestream room seemed to have frozen. They watched as the figure swung his sword in a reverse grip on the third time. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With 3 swishing sounds, the screen was filled with silver flowers. Quan's pupils constricted and he wanted to retreat. He hadn't expected the other party to be so fast. His finances were double his. His first move was a big move. No, I can't fight. That was what Quan was thinking. However, this game wasn't something he could stop just because he said so. He allowed him to use teleportation to return to his original position. The figure seemed to have predicted where he would land, turning around with the mouse. With a sweep of his sword, he set up an electric formation. The Quan that was caught threw the mouse to the ground. He couldn't avoid it, he couldn't avoid it at all. This person was like a ghost. What the hell? The music blared once more. Anyone who knew how to play would know that it was hard for an assassin to remember after being caught twice. Quan's eyes dimmed, and he was about to speak. However, the person in front of him was one step ahead, typing. This is my almighty Qin's maneuvers. Of course, I'm still lacking compared to him. But, Mr. Quan, compared to you who only imitated a tenth of it, Daddy is fully qualified to send you back to the spring. His words were so domineering that the entire computer room was cheering. Lin Feng was the most agitated, waving his hands. Little spade. Hammer. Hammer with all your might. Smash that bastard. Senior Lin, Team Flower Lin. Bojiu tilted her head. Lin Feng didn't care about the name anymore. Why? Continue hammering. Move aside, you're blocking my boyfriend's view. I'm taking revenge for him. Bojiu's voice was calm as she typed, her fingers long and beautiful. Lin Feng. That's right, move aside. Don't block captain. Coco inched forward, trying to leave a good impression in front of his captain. This person isn't sensible. Qin Mo paused for a moment, his thin lips lifting as he nodded. Coco was moved. Was captain responding to him? Sob sob sob, it wasn't easy. Lin Feng. F***ck. He couldn't stay in this team anymore. No one bothered about him except for Yun who pulled him over. The others were still focused on the screen. As a live streamer, it was impossible for Quan not to react. Who are you calling an imposter? You just killed him twice and you're making things up? Everyone is playing the same hero and has the same skills. Why would I need to imitate anyone? Bojiu didn't forget to reply. Whether it's an imposter or not, everyone can tell from his attire. Don't you have any idea? Also, you said I only killed you twice? He. Chapter 13-16. The entire livestream room could see the message. Of course, they found him handsome. But at the same time, most of them noticed Quan's actions. This Quan was purposely conversing with the other party to distract the other party's attention. Now that Quan wasn't speaking, he had made use of the time he was busy typing to sneak over from the other side of the river, hiding in the bushes. Quan's smile was sinister. I'll kill you every time I go out? I'll let everyone see how I'm going to slap your face. Quan wasn't in a hurry, he was just making sure. He waited for the person to stop, for the time when there was nothing left to hit. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. He hit the soldier 3 times, and then suddenly rushed up. He wasn't slow. A big move landed on Bojiu. In the blink of an eye, Bojiu was left with less than a third of her HP. F***ck, isn't he shameless? Lin Feng was an experienced gamer. With just one look, he could tell what he was up to. Little Spade had just finished typing and he was already charging forward. It was obviously a dirty move. Everyone assumed the person was going to die. They couldn't see the youngster in front of the computer moving her right hand swiftly, back and forth, drawing a letter on the mouse pad. Z. But it was precisely this kind of movement that allowed her in-game character to perfectly evade all of the opponent's attacks. Quan was taken aback by the back-and-forth movement. He had wanted to predict his opponent's movements, but now he couldn't. Unexpectedly, the person seemed to be escaping. Escaping? That would be easy. Quan chuckled as he charged forward once more, about to catch up. Unexpectedly, the person dodged to the left, entering the defense tower. He was already at a sliver of HP. How could Quan allow him to escape? He had to take this HP. What he didn't expect was that the moment he entered the pagoda, the figure raised his sword, turned around, and enlarged himself. F***ck. That was Quan's first reaction. He dragged the mouse and retreated hurriedly. He had expected to reach the end. But the defense tower. He still had to endure the damage from the defense tower. He could escape. He would definitely be able to escape. He had been so focused on escaping that he had forgotten about his movement skill. The defense tower and the little soldier's damage reached its target. Quan fell to the ground. The game music played once more. Oh, the third time. This was already the third time. The fans watching the live broadcast were so excited that they wished they could run a few laps. But do you think this is the end? No. Because the silver-haired youth sitting in front of the computer leisurely typed a line of words. Do you find this scene very familiar? Familiar? How is he familiar? The fans were confused. But this didn't stop the smart ones from immediately grasping the main point of this sentence. Go. It was the same scene when he fought with Almighty Qin. I remember now. The last one. What do you mean by the previous round? Before anyone could explain, someone else said. If you didn't have the support to heal you in the last round, the one who died wouldn't have been my Almighty Qin, but you. Wow. It's really because of the last round. Wait a minute. Does this mean that this person purposely let his HP drop to critical levels, and then lure a certain streamer into the defense tower just to recreate that scene and help Almighty Qin vent his anger? Chapter 13-17. A normal professional player wouldn't be able to do it, but if it's that person, it's possible. Fans who often watched the league knew who that person was talking about. Among the junglers on the national server, other than Almighty Qin, there was only one person who could achieve such an effect. The FC King of Zone C, Spadesy. Although that person hadn't appeared for a long time, but the players still remembered the first time they saw that person. That was how she was, using a lower-level account to kill a higher-level opponent. Every round, she would bring the team to victory. Even now, it was still the same. What should we do? The CP fans are imagining things again. This isn't about the CP fans, right? This is obviously the girlfriend taking revenge for her boyfriend. I'm guessing someone is definitely trying to make Almighty Qin happy. Look up at the sky. This display of affection is really admirable. Wait a minute. Look at that person's ID. Little sweetheart Qin is mine. I seem to have found out about a huge secret. My boyfriend saw you acting coquettishly just now and he's beside me now. He's jealous and I have to think of a way to make him happy? So Almighty Qin is sitting beside someone. The above commenter is the truth. As a boyfriend he doesn't waste any words, he's going to catch him in the jungle. At this moment, Bojio saw the conversation on the public chat. Her fingers paused and she turned towards the Almighty seriously. Brother Mo, the whole world knows that I like you. MH. When he raised his hand he was still smiling. His hand landed on the youngster's furry head, feeling the warmth of his palm. He actually felt happy. Bojio took the chance to flirt. Look, I told you I wasn't lying to you. Yet you're always on guard against me. In the past you always wanted to marry me. When are you going to fulfill that promise? Don't keep dragging me. Don't you know that chasing a girl can't be dragged out? Lin Feng and Coco were the closest to the two of them. When they heard the young man's casual words, their eyes widened like lanterns hanging outside. They looked at each other, their expressions and actions expressing the same meaning. F***ck, Little Spade really did everything to get Captain's love. How could he say such shameless words? Lin Feng was the first to react. He turned to Bojio and cupped his fists. He was impressed. Bojio waved her hand calmly, smiling mischievously as a reply. It wasn't a big deal. I really can't compare. I can't compare. Lin Feng clutched his chest as if he had suffered a heavy blow. I finally know why I haven't been able to find a girlfriend for so many years. It's all because I'm too thin-skinned. I can't even compare to a girl. As he said this, someone responded to him. You still want to find a girlfriend? It was Yin Hu. He looked at him, a hint of coldness in his ink-black eyes. Lin Feng felt his scalp go numb from being stared at. He coughed lightly and said casually, I'm just giving an example. Chapter 13-18. Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat. Then he seemed to have recalled something, his fingers turning cold and flustered. He shifted his gaze. F***ck, don't joke around. Yinhu's eyes dimmed. He didn't say anything but his expression didn't change. Qin Mo tapped the youngster's cheek. What do you think will happen if you drag this on? Like me being sad or something, Bojio replied. Qin Emo arched a brow. I made you sad? Bojio took a moment, feeling troubled. She hadn't. But before she could reply, the Almighty added. The Almighty added. Even if you're sad, I can comfort you. Mh. Bojio heard it. Even though it was faint and slightly arrogant, she wanted to hear it again. The Almighty was comforting her? Qin Emo watched his clear eyes. Just as he was about to speak, a cold sneer came from the live stream. I was wondering who it was. So it's that androgynous person who disguised himself as a man in order to attract fans. Now he's here to cause trouble for me. What's the point? No one wants to see you in the competition. Supreme Alliance too, they have so many almighties but instead, they have a troublemaker by their side. Uft. The pft caused Qin Mo's gaze to turn cold. Lin Feng was the first to react. F***ck, this person is asking for a beating. This time, Bojio remained silent. Qin Mo tilted, his right hand reaching over to snatch the keyboard in front of her. Brother Mo? Bojio tilted her head. That person's slender and good-looking fingers typed a string of words on the screen. Now let this boyfriend of mine fight you. You shouldn't be afraid. After all, you just killed me last time. That sentence caused a commotion in the live stream room. Boyfriend of this account. Boyfriend of this account. Almighty Qin. Ah, my Almighty Qin. What's going on? Almighty Qin is going up? Even though I'm happy that Almighty Qin is going up, he isn't in a good state. The previous round. Quan glanced at the bullet screen before glancing down at the bottom of the screen. His lips curved into a mocking smile. Against the FC King, he might be caught and beaten up. But against Qin Mo, who wasn't in the same state as before, he was very confident. Almighty Qin is here? It seems like the rumors are true. Almighty Qin is willing to sacrifice Supreme Alliance's reputation for Spadesy. Since the Almighty is so passionate, I have no choice but to accept your challenge. Let's not fight for mana anymore. Let's fight in the middle lane. What do you think? Soon the other side replied with one word. Clean and efficient. All right. Coco looked at the word good and couldn't help but worry. Lin Feng felt the same way. These fans might not know. The captain wasn't in a bad state. Instead, he had lost all memories of the game. If you look at him from the perspective of a rookie, he had only played the game for 2 days. 2 days, was it really possible? A 1v1 like this? Coco wanted to move but Rao Rong, who was standing beside him, pressed him down and said in a low voice, "Look again." For the last time. If he was serious, what would he be like? Chapter 1319. On the screen, Qin Mo's character had already skimmed out of the spring. Quan was on the opposite side. In order not to disturb the Almighty, Bojio wanted to stand up. She didn't expect that the man would empty a hand and hold her down. His voice was very calm. Watch. Mh. Watch him take revenge for her? Bojio stilled. She supported her chin with one hand, lifting her thin lips lazily. After the words, "this number's boyfriend," warmth filled her heart. The fans watching the livestream noticed Quan's foul once again. He had said he wouldn't use the blue buff, but he didn't head straight for the middle lane. Instead, he used a blue buff in his own jungle before turning and charging towards Qin Mo. Everyone saw the figure. It was coming from the blue buff side, and it even had an ultimate move. They watched as the damage was about to land on the Almighty. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the figure was faster than him. With a movement technique, he retreated to the bottom of the tower with his long sword. Missed. It was obvious that Quan had missed his big move. He couldn't accept it, mocking the beasts by the grass. Almighty Qin? Why did you retreat to the bottom of the tower? How are you going to fight if you don't come out? Don't tell me he's scared? The moment he finished his sentence, a silver light flashed across the screen. Everyone watched as a silver light flashed across the screen. In the blink of an eye, it had landed on Hound's body. The electric circle had taken away a quarter of Hound's health. Ha, you want to kill me in your current state? After Quan was slowed down, he flipped his hand and gave Qin Mo another big move, his tone smug. You fell for it, old man. This time, the damage was very high. Almost all the sword lights hit Qin Mo's body. Lin Feng clenched his fists, wishing he could join the fight himself. Coco pinched the fluffy bunny in his arms. The fans watching the match did not dare to look at this scene. After all, it wasn't possible for the Almighty to do such a thing. When had he ever been suppressed by someone? Everyone still remembered that even if his hand was injured, as long as he picked up the assassin, he would be able to fight 1 against 3 in the later stages. But now he had made an obvious mistake in such a simple judgment. That's it. End your esports career. It's time to give the opportunity to us newbies who haven't been able to stand out. Quan laughed sinisterly as he raised his sword, and was about to chase after the white figure in front of him and kill him. Everyone thought that Almighty Qin was dead for sure. But at this moment, the people who were watching from the dog's point of view only felt that the person in front of them had disappeared in an instant. Just like Quan, they were all stunned. In the next second, he remembered that it was a teleportation skill. Almighty Qin was behind him. Quan's movements were quick. You want to lie to me? Dream on. The moment he turned, he wanted to give Qin Mo a fatal blow. Let's see what you can do this time. But just as his long sword was about to fall, the figure in front of him was 1 step ahead of him, moving towards the bushes. Then with a backhand he raised his sword and enlarged it. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The silver-white sword light seemed to be singing an idyllic song as it revolved around him. Quan's eyes narrowed. His fingers involuntarily pinched the mouse in his right hand. When did he use such a powerful skill? When he had returned to the tower to clear the troops. Which meant that Qin Mo hadn't returned to the tower to hide, but to wait for the skill. Attack. Chapter 13:20. They were clearly separated by a screen. However, the moment the silver light rose, Quan actually felt his entire right hand aching. He thought of retreating, or perhaps moving forward. It was that 1 second of hesitation. The game's music started playing. Quan watched as his character fell to the ground, covered in blood. In the end, he didn't even have the chance to turn the situation around. Beside the bushes, that person held a sword in his right hand. He stood tall and straight, his white robes fluttering in the wind. His side profile was handsome, and the silver light on the screen seemed to be reduced to his background. Not to mention the comments that flooded the public chat. Counterattack with low HP. This was a true counterattack at critical health. Holy sh*t. It's so cool. Almighty Qin isn't fighting, he's showing off his skills. He's showing off to the point that his opponent has nothing left to live for. Shh. Quiet, quiet. Almighty Qin doesn't want to fight a certain streamer head-on. Tell me, how should we fight? If he fights, he'll definitely return to the spring. As a professional player, I can't let ordinary players feel that this game is too bad, or else my popularity will drop. Be serious. I'm going to have a nosebleed from watching this. Is this even possible? Countless screams and screams quickly swept across the public chat. There was only one message that was displayed at the bottom right corner. That was Qin Mo's message. I'll kill you every time you come out. If you can't, it's my loss as your boyfriend. That was all. He was practically announcing it to everyone. I'm punching you, not because you provoked me, but because you provoked my girlfriend. If the hound hadn't come out before, he had no face at all now. Counterattack with low HP. This was as good as telling him just how big of a gap there was between the two of them, even though they were playing the same game. 4 times. He had already died 4 times. That number was like a slap to his face. But this time, he wasn't playing quietly. He was doing a live broadcast, so he couldn't surrender. But if they didn't surrender and let him out, he would only die more. In the end, the figure blocked the spring just to kill him. Quan was clear that after losing so much face, there was a high chance that no one would watch his live stream again. The popularity he gained from winning against Qin Mo. Everything was gone. He couldn't accept this. This was too unreconciled. He even felt wronged. He was also afraid of being recognized. When the crystal finally broke, he immediately logged out of the game. He didn't even complete the host's requirement of broadcasting for 2 hours a day. After he stood up, he threw a huge tantrum. Just when he thought that was it, a stranger in QQ said to him, "Are you willing to lose just like that?" Of course not. The hound did not want to go back at first. But when he saw the next sentence, his thoughts changed. "I can help you. I know everything about Qin Mo, and you're right. He isn't as strong as before, but it's not because of his hand injury. If you're interested, reply me and we can have a good chat." It was as if the gods and ghosts were at work. Although he did not know who the other party was, Quan sat back down and hesitated for a moment before typing. "What do you want to talk about?" Chapter 13:21. The man's words pierced through Quan's last shred of shame. This made him pound the keyboard loudly. "What is your purpose? Are you here to help me or to mock me?" The stranger typed again. "Young man, don't be anxious. I'm saying this to tell you that you can't react like this. The people on the internet just need to pretend to be wronged. No matter what you've done, they'll forgive you. Besides, you only took a few things from someone else. What's the big deal? If you pretend to be pitiful during the broadcast and apologize, some people will naturally forgive you. Some people might even think that the pro players are suppressing you. After all, in my eyes, those methods just now were too flashy. Think about it carefully. Isn't what I said right?" At this point, Quan found a balance in his heart. Isn't he suppressing the newbie? That person is afraid of others surpassing him. What almighty? He's probably crippled now. Wait a minute, you said that the problem with his strength wasn't because of his injuries, but something else? What's the reason? If I'm not wrong, he has amnesia. He has forgotten everything, including the attributes of his character. Do you think the committee would be willing to let such a player represent China in the Asian Cup? Even if he used to be the most valuable almighty in the market. This competition isn't about business, it's about who is the safest. Amnesia? Qin Mo had amnesia. Quan's first reaction was disbelief. He continued to read the message, reading it over and over again. In the end, his eyes dimmed and he stared at it for a long time. On the other end of the computer was the person. She didn't even dare to reveal her face, afraid that the system would recognize her. She had rented a house and hadn't stepped out since she came to Jiang City. She knew that the moment she revealed herself, she would be in danger of being caught. She didn't know why the special forces were chasing after her relentlessly. If not, she wouldn't have to hide in a corner. But soon, she wouldn't have to live in such a sullen state. She had always known that the information she had could bring that person to her side. She had even triggered him mentally. Why would he waste his time on gaming? Right now, he should be on their side. She didn't have to think to know that the moment he saw them, murderous intent surged in his heart. He was such an outstanding person. He should rebuild their organization with her. If he had been the hypnotist, Fan Jia believed that no matter how skilled he was, he wouldn't have been able to solve his crimes. Soon, she would get that man back. Firstly, he must not participate in the Asian Cup. As for his team members, they could no longer come into contact with him. If this news was released, it would definitely cause some disintegration, no matter which side it was. Fan Jia had seen the Qin Group's PR, it was indeed good. But how could they do PR for such a thing? She had wanted to send this message the moment she arrived in Jiang City. But Fan Jia knew that someone had to follow up on this. She couldn't just expose herself like this. Now there was such a person. Chapter 13:22. No one in the engine room knew what they were about to face. It was the most basic kind of courage. Seeing Qin Mo smash into pieces, his heart was filled with joy. Wuxia was happy too. After all, the Almighty had admitted to the entire server that he was her boyfriend. He had even admitted it 3 times. Rao Rong stood there, deep in thought. How did you get your maneuvers? Wasn't it just a casual game? Qin Mo asked casually, his brows arched. Casual game? Rao Rong paused, breaking into a smile. You are really? Sometimes he had to acknowledge the existence of a genius. Then why didn't you make any predictions during the previous match? Qin Emo glanced up, looking lazy. I haven't seen that character. It happened in an instant. Everyone in the engine room stilled, turning to ask, Captain didn't play the game after you came back? That wasn't possible. Wasn't there a video online about little Secretary Qin being my wife? He played the opening. I played the rest while he watched from the side. But I didn't have any controls in the 2 matches I played yesterday. That was why Captain hadn't predicted his opponent's skills. That was because he only knew a few characters in the game. In other words, as long as he familiarized himself with all the characters, he would be able to regain his previous abilities. Of course, there was also his familiarity with the keyboard and mouse. The latter wasn't the most important, because in that match just now they had discovered something. Even though he had lost his memory, Captain's body still remembered, instinctively executing the most precise maneuvers. This wasn't related to intelligence. It had been 3 years. He had been training every single day for the past 3 years. While everyone said he was talented, they couldn't see the calluses between his slender fingers and the lack of rest in his neck. They were afraid of falling sick in their line of work. They didn't dare to get sick. Especially when it was time for the competition, they were afraid it would affect their condition. He smoked more fiercely than the average person. Perhaps it was because of these sacrifices that others couldn't see that he had walked out and become the carry that every boy liked, the strongest jungler in the entire game. With such a past. In that instant he didn't have to be afraid of anything. Now he just needed time. Lin Feng was the most excited. Let's start today. Let Captain use all the game characters once. As long as we have enough time for Captain to familiarize himself with these characters, we will be able to participate in the Asian Cup the day after tomorrow. 2 days. No, to be precise. It should be less than 2 days. 36 hours. Excluding the time for eating and sleeping, there were only 24 hours left. He had 24 hours to familiarize himself with all the characters in the game, and he clearly knew what methods to use to evade, the recovery time of the opponent's skills, the damage dealt, and the skills used. It was too difficult. It was too difficult. But if it was the Captain, there was still hope. At that moment, everyone turned around and looked at Qin Mo. The light in their eyes was so bright that it was almost shocking. But soon, she saw that handsome and indifferent side profile. Their hearts skipped a beat again. Would the Captain agree? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.